Elect the,
What's that?
need to elect a pro tem or something?
We do.
Yes.
Oh, wait, where's Jake on?
Jake is
Yeah,
on. He called me earlier. He said his service is going to be questionable, so he would prefer to have someone else run it
Okay.
unless he changes his mind since we talked.
I
I'll make
didn't
a
change my mind.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to nominate Arthur Pavitt to run the meeting.
Second.
We got you last time, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't move fast enough. Okay.
1, 2, 3, not it.
Okay, well, let's get started then. First of all, let's establish a quorum. We have Marla and you said Eric. Oh, you said Eric is. Hey, Eric. Apparently Eric is physically here, but we don't see him.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. Okay. We have Marla and Eric representing the Washington side of this, and myself and Grant and representing the Oregon side, and Jake is representing Washington, but unclear as to whether he will be here for the entire meeting. So we won't count him as part of the quorum until we have a vote. Great, so let's move on.
Catherine Thomas is on virtually as the alternate.
Thank you,
By
Catherine.
Fox Next Vote.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So good to see you, Catherine. And so you will be a voting member today also. Thanks. Let's move on with the approval of the agenda. Any modifications or additions?
I do have one modification. I would like to add two items related to right of way. One is the conflict of interest policy, and one is some right of way transactions between the Port Hood River and ODOT that may affect the project. Apologize for these not being on. They came in late last week, and I thought since our next meeting is a month away, we should try to get these on if you guys are.
And so these are informational.
They're actually, we will need to decide that as part of the meeting. There are some actions that need to be taken. You may not have enough information or feel like we want to do that in this meeting. But if you do, then yes, there may be actions that we need to take during this meeting.
Okay, how do people feel about adding this to the agenda? Any objections to that?
The discussion.
It's discussion for now with a potential motion based on the discussion.
Okay.
Any objections?
We would have had them earlier, but these came in late last week after we did the agendas and stuff, so. But
I have an addition. I don't know if point of order. Do you want to do just staff?
No, we can modification additions, so go ahead.
Okay. I would be open to having a discussion about our meeting times as an authority. So bringing that forward is something for discussion and potentially moving it to a committee or action.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. Does anyone have any problem with us discussing that today?
No.
With no objection, we'll make that modification to the agenda also. We can put both of those, let's see, well, the right-of-way stuff is not, is it new business?
I would put it under new business.
We've got new business, okay. And yeah, well, let's put both of those under new business then. Seems like a good place to park them. So any objections to moving forward with the agenda as modified? Seeing none, let's move forward. Approval and correction of the minutes from October 14th, 2024. Do I have a mission? Do I have a motion on the minutes? Okay, I just got
Second.
We have a second, moved by Paulson, second by Anderson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to adopting the minutes as presented? Seeing no objection, the minutes are adopted. Public comment. Do we have any members of the public who wish to comment? I'm looking online. I'm not. Let's see who. Any public members online? If you wish to speak, it's *7.
Just unmute.
Unmute. Yeah, unmute. If you're unmute, you can unmute. I'm picking phone numbers, but we don't have any phone numbers up there, so that's not a problem. So anyone who wishes to unmute and address us, go ahead. And not seeing anybody jumping, so let's move forward.
Sorry, you do have another commissioner. Seth just joined.
Oh, okay. So Seth, how many folks do we have on the Washington side?
So Jake drops out. We have another.
So great. So Seth, you are backing up Jake in case he drops out.
Okay, sounds good. Can you guys hear me okay?
We hear you great. Thank you.
Great.
So let's move forward with the executive reports. The co-chairs report. Jake, do you have anything to report?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, and Mike Fox is not here today. So the bridge director update, Mike.
All right, I'm just gonna hit on a couple things in the bridge update, and if you have any questions. Hood River County loan is still being worked on. Grant may have an update later, no? Okay, so that's still being worked on between legal and developing of the terms between the county and our legal staff. So,
Okay.
federal funding on the BIP application. We'll cover that during the presentation, but there's some information here. We'll give a little more in depth on VIP application as part of the presentation today. And then TIFIA continues to move forward with that TIFIA loan and the investment grade study.
I mean,
We have to move forward with the investment grade study in order for TIFIA. That has started, and TIFIA has said that they will not begin the credit worthiness until that evaluation is done. So that, depending on the timing of that, will depend on whether it impacts schedule. So we'll continue to monitor that.
I think
in our
that's
TIFIA loan application.
I take it that's the routine way that these are done.
It is.
Okay.
So, the other thing, just on the treaty tribe MOAs, we have multiple meetings coming up. We have their in-person meetings. So on the 12th of November, myself and Catherine Thomas will be going to Idaho to meet with Nez Perce for their meeting. And then we have a in-person meeting on the 18th with Yakima Nation, and one which is a Monday, and then one on Tuesday, the 19th with Umatilla. The last update from FHWA, it sounds like in their recent conversations that those tribes are starting to move towards giving us back a proposal and response. So it's good steps forward there if we may hear some proposals from those groups at these meetings coming up.
Fingers crossed.
So I've got a couple of questions on right away about there was a note in here about two property owners not willing to participate. What that was just we were doing right of entries in order to gather information. One of them was the Cameron property. That's been something even during the NEPA phase, and it's their right to just say, hey, we don't really want you on our property. Neither one of them are direct impacts to the project or what we're planning to do. So it's not a major impact to the project. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was kind of familiar with what that meant, that they weren't participating.
So you say they have a right to that. Obviously they do. But you don't believe that's causing any problem for us?
It's not causing any problems, and right now there's no proposed improvements or impacts to their properties.
Okay.
And the last one was, and this will be part of the conversation today, is the right-of-way conflict of interest, which is impacting our 6F process and right-of-way process with the port. So we'll talk about that when we talk about this.
The new business. Okay.
I have one question. When does the public comment close that's currently open for stakeholders on the?
It's in the 30 days. I'll have to get you the date of when it actually closes. That's for the 106.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get you that date.
I didn't realize it was still open.
We
Yeah,
reopened. Yeah, they reopened that
It-
consultation for the
It's
consulting
close
parties.
if it didn't just close.
It's very close to closing. Let me look in the permitting for it to see if they actually said. It actually might be in here. I'll get you that answer. But it's very, yeah, it is very close. We had a meeting last week with the consulting parties, and ODOT did the meeting for the portion of that last week, so it should be close. I think that's all for right now. That's everything.
Great.
Unless there's questions related to.
Any questions for Mike? Doesn't look like you took anything loose. So let's move on. The legal report, not this meeting, right? We're on the second meeting of the month, right? Yes. Yes. Government relations report. Dan, can we get you to move up to the table?
Yes, happy to. Yeah.
Otherwise you'll break my neck.
Thanks, Arthur. Hey, everyone. October's been a busy month in the government relations realm. happy to be moving on to the election and hopefully quieter times in November. Thanks to everybody.
Where do you live?
No comment. Thanks to everyone who's helped out with legislator meetings and other government relations activities in the past month here. October 1st, of course, we did the bi-state transportation leadership meeting in Vancouver. Throughout the month, Thorn Run and Boswell have organized like 20 or so individual meetings with legislators and candidates to give them bridge updates. Most of those are completed, but we've got a few more that we've decided to put on hold until after the electoral dust settles. So we'll have a few more of those to do in November. Of course, at the last authority meeting, there was a vote to pursue more bridge investment program funding. And with that, some government relations work we had to do. So our lobbyist teams all work to notify legislative partners and other folks at the federal and state levels, both ahead of last meeting's vote and then after, once we had the new numbers. So, you know, what we're hearing back, I mean, folks are appreciative of the contact. It's important that they hear that directly from us and not from the public. So, you know, on the substance of the matter, you know, they're hearing about cost increases from other projects around the states and around the country. One legislator even said that ours was the second such call that he'd gotten that day about a cost hike. So we're certainly not alone in that. You know, cost increases are never easy to hear, but state folks understand that we're not looking for more money from them. But, you know, we've got more work to do between here and session. And then once we get into session to, you know, really help drive home the message about how we got here and what we need from them. At the federal level, our lobbyist summit, they're working hard to get us bridge investment program letters of support. So still feeling good support from our federal delegation and working to get those letters in hopefully by the end of this week here. You know, like I said, this next couple of weeks, maybe a little bit of a lull as we get into and through the election. So more time to gather those support letters, plan for activities that'll be happening between the elections and the new year when we get state legislative session rolling. So stop there. And any questions?
So I've got one, but I'll go ask anyone else. Any questions for Dan? Oh, there goes Jake. Oh,
Dan, we reached out to all of our senators and legislators. Did we reach out to federal highways and both DOTs ahead of time?
We have contacted them now. We have a meeting on Thursday with HRWSBA, so I believe they're all aware.
I know everybody's aware, but did we proactively reach out to our partners, or did we focus just on our legislators?
We focused on the legislative folks.
Okay. Thanks.
okay. So let me ask, to what degree are we disadvantaged at the BIP application by not having the states of Oregon and Washington fully committed on the 250 million there? Is there any way to, what can you say about that subject?
Sure.
Is Summit on? I feel like they might want to jump in on that too. Or-
We'll hit a little bit of that on in the presentation as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, you know, from what I understand, I mean, it's always better to have your full funding picture rounded out, except for that last piece that allows you to go to construction. But you know, it's certainly no death knell, right? We got our $200 million infra grant with the current state of affairs here, pawing through other projects that got bridge investment money or mega money. It's kind of a smattering. Sometimes that Fed money is the last in.
Right.
I mean, to answer your question, it would definitely be better if we had those full commitments. But you know, we're still competitive without it.
Okay. Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you. So any other government relations questions? Seeing none, let's go into partner updates. Mike, you know, help me here.
We've got Martin, who's from FHWA.
Okay. Martin, do you care to make a comment? There
Sure.
you are.
Yeah, hi. We didn't hear about the price increase. We kind of got it offhandedly. I think Ashley got an email that was kind of just, oh, by the way. And I guess when it comes to going to DC, we'd love to be informed and to go with you rather than kind of have it come back from them that this stuff is going on. So
Okay,
You know, yeah, we'd love to be included and we're looking forward to seeing you all on Thursday. And be good.
great. Good input, thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline Rousseau is from WashDOT.
I've been seeing her up there. Caroline, would you care to comment? Where are you seeing her? Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Right, Caroline, now, okay, now I see it. Do you have anything to add, Caroline? Okay, let's,
Right above her is Rob Hoffman from.
Rob ODOT. There you go.
I don't have anything to add.
Nothing to add, was that what you just said?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So ODOT, WashDOT, Federal Highways, okay, so open action items. And I don't think the list open. Do you have a list, Andy?
We don't have any right now.
Oh, okay, that's why I don't have a list. Okay. That would explain it. So let's move into the consent agenda. We have an HNTB budget reallocation. It's on page 14 of your packets. You want to explain? Go ahead.
Sure. So, as we brought on more strategies for kind of as a leadership role, coordination role for government relations. That was brought on kind of to see how that would, what the effectiveness of that would be. I think it's been effective. We would like to continue that. The amount of effort that has been requested has been more than what was anticipated. So we would like the opportunity to change his contract to be able to go to a time and material rather than a lump sum that it is now.
Okay.
Given that role. What we need from the authority in order to do that is to be able to fund that budget. We need to have the authority to move money from other tasks to that task to be able to fund that. And that's really what we're asking is the authority to do that. We're not asking for an increase in the budget right now.
Right.
But just
Right
to, as of right
I
now.
heard that right now.
Right now, say it again, it's as of right now.
Yeah.
But we think we can fit that in there, but our budget is getting very tight between now and the end of the year. With this and with other things that we've added, Salmon Safe, was another one that we added. So, all of those have had some impacts on, fit those within our current budget.
Okay.
But right now we think we can fit this in. But this, like I said, what this is asking for is just the authorization to be able to move that money around.
Right.
We'll work with the communications group and communications task force on scope and fund and fee and rates and all that. We'll follow our contract requirements on that. When we set his time and material direct rate.
But it wouldn't be crazy for us to expect that there will be an increase coming along at some point associated with this.
We're going through all of our subs right now, and I have sent them their remaining budgets and their remaining scope.
Right.
And I am asking them to confirm that based on what they have left to do, that they can do it within the budget that they have.
Okay.
And then when I get all those responses back, I will know for sure whether or not we can fit this within the budget.
So you think next meeting we'll have that?
The next meeting, I'll be able to tell you for sure whether or not we do. We will, I know, need to move some money around between some other tasks to cover some things. I know NEPA is probably going to overrun. We've had a ton of other stuff there.
Right.
And doing the reeval that we've been able to cover with the last adjustment. Or the reallocation that we did. So there probably will be another one in November just to cover subtasks or tasks that are, pushing up on their final budgets.
Right.
But we'll bring those all back to you in November and tell you kind of what we need to finish out the year.
Okay. I don't want to get out of this issue. So this issue, you say that you're not asking for additional, you're just asking for authority to reallocate. But we do have that discussion and it'll be helpful to understand.
We'll give you all the
how that-
details. Yeah. Right now, I don't
I
have
think
this.
some of it too is not just about subs, but again, some of this is about work now happening by a sub that previously was a line item of billable hours to HNTB staff.
Right.
So in that sense, it's kind of like a linear move of that much was staying with HNTB, that work is now happening somewhere else. So I think part of that whole sweep, our conversations between Mike and I do feel currently confident that this doesn't affect the phase 1A we're in, but I think the broader discussions that we all have to have about the different parts of this project for 1B we are looking holistically across government relations and communications about where money needs to be spent.
Right.
And what the work is that needs to be done in that. And
Right.
so,
And that'll come back, and what Marla's talking about will come back to the board in December for our 1B.
Okay.
It'll be through the committees, between now and then. It'll probably be, well, there will be 3 touches with the committees, the communications committee and C committee and finance committee at a minimum, to kind of just work through the details and then bring it back to the board, for approval for 1B contracts.
So what I'm hearing, and just tell me if I'm right, is that, that with the experience that we've gained, you're reevaluating how to deliver certain functions or what is important and what is not important. And that based on that, there will likely be changes both in what's delivered and how it's delivered. Is that
yeah,
correct? Okay.
yeah. Making sure the money we're allocating to comms is delivering the things we need
That
out
we
of
need,
comms
right.
versus a bunch of hours that are drawing down without
Right,
like
without
tangible
accomplishing what we need.
things. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we have a requested action. Can I get a motion on allowing HTTP to reallocate the existing budget from other tasks to our strategies? Moved by Grant,
I'll second.
second by Marla. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor.
Aye.
I run too many different meetings that I forget which meeting I'm doing here.
They're all slightly
Are these
different.
Robert's rules or Arthur's rules?
Well, it's exactly who said it. I'm sorry, those in favor, we heard Jake say yes.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. Chair votes aye. Or
Yeah.
Chair Pro Tem votes aye. What are we doing? Okay, great, thank you. Copy the agenda here. So let's see, the next is the committee reports. And so let's see, funding and finance budget first meeting. So engineering construction. Are you Mike today?
I am.
Go ahead, Catherine, thank you.
Were you there last time we talked meeting, engineering committee meeting?
I think I was.
Okay, I just wanted to do you want to talk first and I can fill in whatever you, okay. So we had a great meeting, our last committee meeting. We are very much aware of the price, and so we discussed how we want to ensure that we are still leading, but yet not allowing, we picked a great contractor, and so we want them to still be able to come with ideas to us. We don't want to keep telling them exactly what to do because that's not our job. We're not bridge builders. They're the bridge builders. We're just the commission. And so we did talk about various off ramps that are aware and that we're aware of, just in case, we need to maybe utilize them.
It would be helpful to just remind everybody what those off ramps are.
So there is a chance potentially, if we can come to an agreement, that we may need, to have a complete design package that can be built by a contractor for the bridge that we need for our community. And so if that means that we have to utilize an off ramp, either Kiewit doesn't want to continue with the project or we don't want to continue with Kiewit, there's an opportunity for that to happen.
Just basically switching to design build from progressive design build.
Correct.
Correctly.
But it would be a design that would be built by the contractor. There'd be no more designing. The designing should be completed
Oh, okay.
at that point.
Can I revise that a little bit? Okay, so, and I was gonna cover this in the presentation, but I'll just cover it now. If you want to wait, I can cover it. I was gonna go over it later.
Yeah,
That's what your options are. So.
Are you you're gonna cover that specifically?
Yeah.
Great, okay. But really ensuring that whatever is designed can be built by more
Yeah.
people than just the one contractor. Because that would really put us at a disadvantage. We did do a budget review, and I'm just checking the notes from the engineering committee meeting on my phone. I'm not like
You're allowed to.
scrolling
you're allowed
Instagram or
to check
something.
notes.
Deep scrolling.
If you start texting while you're
I
talking,
won't, I
we'll be really
promise.
impressed.
We did talk about the different criteria that we're following. And we want to make sure that it's been said that if we do pick ODOT versus WashDOT, we need to ensure that the people that are instituting and overseeing those understand what their industry standards, but also understand the standards from the state. So hypothetically, if ODOT is overseeing the bridge and we're doing WashDOT standards, does ODOT actually understand and can they institute WashDOT standards? So that's something we definitely want to bring to the larger group for discussion. we went through the master schedule, we went through the submittals, we have received new submittals from Kiewit that the cultural competencies of stuff has been submitted and that's being through the process right now. I thought it was very well done and I only had a very few comments, so I wanted to kind of put that out there that the work that is being submitted is able to be reviewed, I guess is the best thing to say. And that is all that I had. And I didn't hear that Mike mentioned that we are going to keep those treaty talks going. And we're very excited for the in-person portion because that seems to be the best when we can get that done. And so that's happening. There's 3 of them coming up here very shortly, which is great for the bridge. So
Right.
anything to add, Eric?
No, I think Mike has, sounds like he's got a presentation.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Everybody should
basically all the stuff about value engineering and kind of how those decisions are coming down the path, you're gonna be talking about that.
Presentation, yeah.
So we won't put you on the spot about any of that stuff. Great.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have a question.
go ahead.
So if what comes to mind for me, and I'm just wondering what our checkpoint is as they move forward with their design. What is that either internal audit or self-initiated audit from Kiewit to alert us as the authority when they're proposing a design that is going to take other potential firms out of the equation or decisions that are unique to what Kiewit can provide and unwittingly tie our hands. So an off-ramp is either so problematic or cost intensive because of the other redirects we'd have to do that we basically lose off-ramps. Like, how are we going forward in a way that we can trust and have confidence that we're not walking blindly down a decision because we've already made one concrete to steel that further complicates like the independence we have with the partner?
Is it your plan to address that?
We can talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've asked you some questions offline, and I think other folks have asked questions offline. So I think the issue, if I'm reading you correctly, is that it's easy that while we all understand that no committee has the authority to make decisions for the group, there are what seem to be minor decisions that can make something fait accompli later on, and you can back your way into it.
Yeah.
You can back your way into that circumstance, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I've asked about how do we avoid that, and I think you asked the same question. So I don't think we get to talk about that today.
I think, if we don't, we can.
Make sure we talk about it. I think
I will cover it. If I don't cover it.
and answer the question, then we'll make sure to answer that question because it will be happening.
All decisions
Right.
are actually a big decision.
Yeah.
Good.
And I think, so another thing I just wanted to bring forward, and I feel like it's appropriate to the engineering committee, but if not, and it's part of a different part of today's meeting, let me know. But feedback from some people that were part of the bridge aesthetics, that design committee process. So, what I'm hearing or heard is somewhat of a frustration, which is understandable in that committee was formed and then time constrained, pushed up to deliver their decisions. And at that time told some ideas had to be off the table because we're not building that expensive of a bridge. This bridge is X, but now as conditions are changing and this bridge has a different project estimate, I think there's a sense from some people that gave their time into that process of how are we reconciling those two things there? There was things that maybe weren't considered because they thought they were achieving this goal of a certain bridge with certain conditions. But now if we're accounting for increases in other ways, why couldn't something have been considered or pushed further at that stage? And I thought it was valid. And I think my fellow commissioners should hear it because it goes deeper into the trust and the relationships we have with the people and stakeholders giving time on this project. Are we also maybe still getting a little ahead of ourselves with some of the things we still need to confront about this project if we push for all this design work in a memo that's supposed to be informing what was known at that time, and now something's changed? Are we going back? How do we reconcile like a moment in time capture where it could look really different if that committee was still doing their work right now?
Right, just to be more specific, Eric led that committee and the committee discussed the aesthetic for a concrete bridge, and a steel bridge has different aesthetic choices. So do you want to address that?
well, I don't want to just kind of keep on, but one of my concerns is we did one public touch point. We were going to do a second one. We realized that having the design effort of Hewitt involved in that would make that, give that a little bit more richness as we come back. So we pushed it out to the fall, and now we're talking about pushing it out to the spring. And it just seems like, you know, that's a year after the aesthetics committee did it. And where's the continuity?
Right.
How do we kind of hold on to that continuity? So it's
Let's
Yeah.
make sure that we
Yeah.
get this, we'll just wrap into.
We can cover all that. Yeah, it'd probably be best to cover it all at once because it all kind of overlaps with where we are in the process and what's going to happen going forward. So I think it'd be good to cover all of that at once.
Let's temporarily park your issue, but make sure that you don't let us forget it.
Yeah. We should cover both of them, so.
Okay.
Well, you're just like promising to cover everything.
Yeah, I mean, what are you actually covering? Because I do want to, or something, no,
Yeah.
offense, want to be, but it's
Well,
like, yeah, we'll cover it, but
Go ahead,
again,
A little
meeting ends at 4 and then we haven't covered our concerns.
Well, we don't have that much between now and then,
Right.
and
So just
a little
wait.
bit of it is a little bit of backing up to talk about how we got where we are and where we are. And then what we're gonna be doing going forward, because I think people feel like we're a lot farther than what the project really is. And I think I wanna have that conversation first so people understand what's ahead of us and they can understand what's coming. And we're not as far as people feel like we are. I think people feel like we're way down at the other end a year and a half from now, and we're a year and a half away from that point.
But talking to specifically the point of a person who went to meetings and gave their concerns and showed up and gave time.
Right.
I can see how a trust could be lost if a lot of things has changed. So I do understand the concern. I think that is a very valid
And
concern.
I think giving back that response at the right time is what's important. And I think providing responses before we know is kind of some of what got us where we are. And I think we need to allow things to move along and then explain to people where we are in the project and what we're providing feedback on so that we don't get ahead of ourselves. And that's what I mean by I think people think we're a lot further along than where we are. We're at 10% design. We are very, very early in the process.
But in terms of the overall aesthetics, in terms of things like, you know, the profile, which you got in the picture there.
Yep.
It's not surprising the public thinks we're further along because we've kind of been doing that.
It is, but all of those things will get tweaked. And yes, we do have a profile. We have a horizontal. We have renderings of what we think might be done until we see Hewitt's base design and we know what is and is not included in that. We don't know what they have and have not included.
Okay,
So I think we need that in order to be able to put forward.
I'm going to move along the meeting so we can get to that discussion. Because we could put that apart a lot without just dancing around without diving right into the middle of it. So let's see, committee reports, we just did engineering and next one's communications. Marla.
Yeah, so obviously some of that was already touched on a bit, Dan's update and then Mike's executive report. I think the main things I just want to call attention to is we're very aware that there's still this strong lack of shared understanding about the ownership and oversight of this project being singularly with this authority. We continue to address that. I think the first round of that Columbia Gorge News article, if you saw it, there was a lot, I think, that worked out of favor for us in terms of continuing a perception that this is a port project.
Yep.
We've corrected that. We continue to correct that. I think we're also going to be relooking at sometimes when we are asked for commissioners to speak on this project, the face of that, because I think it can at times be problematic. And this will happen with other shared roles that county or city electeds have that serve as commissioners. And we do have a board of 12. And so I think thinking more broadly about, you know, perception is often what that visible representation of this project is. And I think now more than ever, it's top of mind how much we need to reinforce that this is not a port project. This is its own separate entity and speak to that. So we're definitely tracking and responding timely when those things are coming out. You guys should have gotten the new talking points. Again, the emphasis there was really about the key points specific to this new updated cost estimate. We're still working, or I mean, the work is underway. It's not still, it's active. the updates to the website and the build out of some of these other areas, the tolling page as well. I like that Eric brought up the open house because that's obviously something in the communication space that we've been working on too, as that timeline's gotten pushed out. But in many ways, I think the targeted communications around kind of the cost increase, the push for BIP, but also at the state, we are a bit in a holding pattern until the election, just to see how those things settle out and frame potentially what we're preparing for a to be determined federal visit, but also what materials we want to be, how we are shifting in the presentation of this project going into the 25 session. So those are kind of key areas that are top of mind in the communication side.
So I'm not a communications person, but to me, the obvious way to communicate the fact that we're separate from the board and that we're unique entity is we need a mascot.
Oh my God, I love that. Yes.
Thank you, Mike. I see you were in favor of this too. Excellent.
I love it.
On the sign out there.
I think it should be the
I'm
squirrel.
not wearing a costume, that's all I'm saying.
Western gray squirrel.
Okay, I will move on before we actually discuss that. Somewhere, anything else in your report?
No, but I'll work on a mascot presentation for a
Okay.
future meeting.
Okay, so let's see, we have nothing under unfinished business, the new business. I wish I had written things down with the pen. We have
Two things, three things. Yeah, one is, there's two things related to right of way. So on Friday, we received a letter back from FHWA in response to our conflict of interest.
Yes.
And they're directing us basically to work with ODOT and the DOJ. Their recommendation and preference is for us to allow ODOT to handle the right of way on this project. But they said if we want to do a recusal, that we need to work with ODOT and DOJ in order to approve that. They did not feel like what we've provided so far resolves it. So my question really to you all, and this is where you want to take action or you want to wait and have some additional discussion is, do you want the staff to have a conversation with ODOT about the right of way and whether they have the capacity to handle the right of way activities under our schedules and whether or not they can commit to that? Or do you want us to continue with ODOT on obtaining approval for us to do the right of way and for us to handle that on our own with getting the right of the conflict fix that? Now, right now, it's specific to the Port of Hood River. It is going to come up when we work with City of White Salmon, County potentially, City of Hood River potentially.
We know that ODOT is excellent at doing right of way. The question is, will they give us the attention and schedule?
Absolutely. It's not a question of whether they know how to do it or can do it. It's a matter of whether or not they will have the capacity and the ability to do it when we need it and in response to the problem. And that's my more concern is, will they have that ability?
Right, and have you had that discussion?
We have not, and I didn't want to have that until I heard back from you all on whether or not you wanted to have that discussion or whether you want us to continue to pursue just getting our current known conflict of interest and recusal process approved by ODOT and ODOJ and us do it ourselves.
Right. And getting that to happen may take longer than getting the ODOT right away. It's kind
I know Marty just came off.
We did, we reached out to ODOT, or Chris did, I should say, and Region 2 right away has said that they have capacity over this winter to help out with right away. So, I mean, you would still need to reach out to them and ask, and so we can make it formal, but they have told us that they'd be able to help you.
So Grant is saying that we're Region 1.
Region 1. Yeah.
So does that make a difference?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
No,
Region
Region 2 has right, as long as it's ODOT's right away, it'll be fine. So it doesn't really, we work with Salem here a lot, so they're.
Yeah.
Marty, one question I had on, and we can talk about this Thursday if you want to table it, was how we cover right away in Washington and any conflicts in Washington. Do we now have to engage WashDOT's right away team to do Washington right away, or can ODOT, do they have the authority to handle right away stuff in Washington?
We're going to have to ask on Thursday, ask Chris on that one. I think ODOT can handle it all. But I don't want to commit to that if that's not the case, but I think they can.
Okay.
Okay,
We'll ask Chris on Thursday.
Okay.
so it seems like we're easing into letting you investigate whether ODOT can handle this. So before we do that accidentally, are we explicitly okay with doing that?
So do we have enough commissioners that are not, that would not have to conflict out if so like city, county, White Salmon,
As far as I know,
like,
so far it's the board. Is there a
There'll
city?
be a
wide
city,
conflict?
there'll be a city one, there's a county, Click County one, I think there's gonna be a Hood River County thing. And yes, you would, because only the ones that sit on that area would have to sit up for that single thing, like, so if I'll use the mayor, for example, she would just be when it was related to the city of White Salmon. For everything else, she would be available. So you're simply taking pretty much one commissioner out for each one of those, so you have plenty of.
I think your question is,
my question is though, is more like, did they say specifically that our recusal plan was not acceptable? Because
No, they said that FHWA does not feel like it resolves it. They said work with ODOT and DOJ to resolve it. That a recusal plan could be done, but it needs to be coordinated with ODOT and DOJ to get approval. And I don't know if our legal they called, but we hadn't had a chance to connect. I know our legal has an opinion on this as well.
okay, but I don't see them here.
Mark's on,
Mark,
but
is there?
it's not Mark, and I don't know if he wants to speak for Kenan, but that's up to Mark.
sorry, go ahead.
I mean.
I'm not gonna
my-
speak for Kinnan, so if
Yeah,
you need to have Kinnan on, just let me know.
Like my concern would be it's one more. I mean, part of what we're struggling with all the way along is kind of holding on to enough of the time critical elements that we can control the overall schedule. And that's the right of way. If you notice in the report, it is always the longest section. I don't know why that is.
And it impacts mitigation, permitting.
That on a time scale really makes me nervous.
But I
We
think
could-
that's what we can ask Mike to look into.
Yeah.
The flip side is that there are a lot of things in the right of way discussion that can take more time than you think that they should, and we can dive into it ourselves and get stuck.
Yeah.
Right.
But
So
when we're
the
doing
question
it,
I asked was, does anyone have a problem with letting Mike proceed to discuss this with ODOT to determine whether there's the ability to meet our schedule and our needs on this? And so are there any objections to that?
I don't have an objection to that, but I do like to, like, if we have capacity between our 12 commissioners, that if you recuse yourself, I mean, somebody can fill in. I don't see why we have to give away authority in that negotiation. I understand the complexity of right of way. I know I'm very aware, but at the same time, like, this is something, right of way is a pretty big part of us succeeding in this. And not that I'm trying to make FHWA mad or, the entity is a big bad. I agree that it looks weird having different people negotiating for, I understand and I totally agree, but we set this up in a way to try to take care of that. So I don't have an objection to speak, but I would rather, if there's a way that we can, what is exactly their problems, we can fix it. We don't want to we want to play the game with the players at the table, but at the same time, like, we have the authority and it's our project. And if we keep giving away sections, I mean, I know ODOT is very overworked. I understand Region 2 has capacity, but like, maybe that person gets sick that has current unbillable hours, and then it's not a priority to them as it is to our authority. And so that is just where my concern comes.
So the discussion is whether we let Mike have the discussions to bring up to see if this is an option. And as part of that, part of the discussion could be whether if something does get in the way, is it a reversible decision?
Right.
How easy is it to flip back?
Do you also want me at the same time to confirm or to see whether or not, or what the process would be in order to recuse a member?
Well, I think it brings forward to me, maybe the work is, yes, move forward and understand what it would look like with ODOT and what potential outs there could be. But to me, the alternative is, and to Catherine's point, if we just had all of the right of way handled by our seated alternates, that 6-person governing authority has no conflicts of holding other elected positions. So does that give a cleaner break and reassurance to FHWA that we are fully removed from all potential overlaps?
Actually, that's not true because one of our alternates works for the county.
Oh, yeah, as salaried staff, not an elected official that's making an action or decision.
That is still, that is still an issue.
Oh, okay.
That is still an
I think all that is basically recusal, so I think what they're saying is if you.
I just
We need
think
to get ODOT and DOJ to approve.
I'd be curious to look into like testing the scenarios of recusal, because from my inclination, the likely scenario where I would feel like the public has a confidence that this is, above board. I, as a mayor of White Salmon, wouldn't want to be involved in any of the right of way negotiations for any of these other agencies, even though I only have a conflict with one. I just think it's cleaner and a better break. So would that be possible if we sit here as electeds also could just opt out and there was this consistent alternate board?
So if I'm hearing you right, I just want to make sure I summarize this to them when I talk about it. The authority would be open to taking the approach of using 4 members that could make decisions related to right of way that would not have any dual roles with any other
Yeah,
agencies.
like almost like a sub voting.
You'd have to provide them that authority.
Yeah.
But you'd have to give that.
We love those
But you'd
committees.
have to give that committee the authority for all right-of-way transactions, and
Yeah.
you guys are,
Right,
we'll
we-
put that on the
We
table.
would have to ask legal also, because we're basically changing our bylaws, so we're doing something that our bylaws don't explicitly describe. And I want to make sure that there's somewhere within our bylaws that lets us do that.
Yeah. So that would be
All right, so let me do some more homework on that then. No decisions needed today. I just wanted to bring it up. It came in on Friday and I just didn't want to wait till a month to at least.
So it's kind of a yes, both and.
Yeah.
That's fine. We'll bring more details to you back.
There's another way
Ask
to get
question
this
you
done.
don't
Like there's,
want.
it doesn't need to be them, it doesn't need us, it
We
can
can
be
ask the
something
question
new.
a month from now and
Yeah.
we need.
But it's like, yeah.
yeah.
All right, the other right of way is the picture that I gave you. And the port and ODOT are working on some jurisdictional transfers and Kevin's on if I mess up this.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, there's more pictures up here if you didn't get one. So what the picture shows is there's properties that ODOT and the port would like to do jurisdictional transfers on because of current ownership. The ones over by the Marina Green area and ones to the, I'll say the right, depending on if you have 84 at the top of the page.
Just to be clear, south is up, right?
South is up, yes. If you put 84 at the top of the page. The ones to the right don't really impact the project and don't matter. The other two, the green one probably does not. But the white one, the only concern we have there is that we will be revising or doing some work in that intersection. It'll probably require us to do some jurisdictional transfer cleanup at the end of the project anyways. And that if there's no issue or concern from the port or ODOT that they need to do that like right now, I think it would be cleaner on the project to just leave all the right of way the way it is today. Let the project do what they need to do, and then we'll clean up the whole thing at the end around that intersection. But what I needed from you all, is it okay to respond to the port that way?
So just so I understand what we're talking about, we've got things that are colored green that says ODOT to port.
Right.
So those are for ODOT to transfer those to port.
The green is current ownership is ODOT.
Right,
The white current ownership is the port.
right.
They would like to transfer those properties to the opposite owner.
And
So-
so why are we involved in this?
Because of the white piece where the intersection is, right at the intersection to the port, that white piece, our project ties in right there.
Right.
And we will be,
Negotiating.
we'll be negotiating with the port if the port owns it right now, which means we would only have to negotiate with the port about that. Right? And then, but at the end of the day, we will then need to negotiate with ODOT because ODOT should own that full intersection. It shouldn't be owned by the port or by the bridge authority. But if we clean it up now, that means we then have to do a transaction or right of way stuff with ODOT,
And then they,
or we wouldn't have to, so it adds another person involved in the process that wouldn't be in the process right now because we're not hitting any ODOT properties outside of that one. So it seemed cleaner to the project to just do that piece at the end, once we know all the improvements, all the tie-ins, everything, who should own what. We can redraw everything and get it done. If it doesn't cause any concerns with ODOT and the port needing to do it right away, and like if Kevin can maybe talk from the port's perspective as far as the need to do that right now. The other three pieces really could probably be done right now, but at least two of them done, in fact.
We're not involved in that at all. right?
No, I'm just saying it doesn't have a project impact, so we don't have a concern on any of those. The only one that we would have a concern is the white one that's at the intersection,
So
and it's just to avoid having another,
so we want to ask
Property
them
owner.
to wait on
to
these.
wait on that one, just on the white one.
What one?
okay, but there's the green sliver right next to that, which nudges up against there. How confident are we that that's not having a project impact?
That should not have any kind of project impact on that sliver.
You're confident?
Right now, yes.
Okay.
The only question though is, I know when we talk about, we have those task force meetings with the lighting. If we were to transfer this to ODOT, is ODOT going, my only question is like, they're like, oh wait, it's not 4 centimeters high as it should be, and it's not 15 degrees to the left as it should be, and then we're gonna have to be responsible for the upgrades to this antiquated signal system that's right here currently, that's not actually really, are we responsible then to make sure that that's up to code and everything is up to code? Because we only have the design to this point. We don't have it through the intersection. And are you then responsible for making the intersection ODOT worthy?
It is an ODOT intersection. They don't.
Intersection.
It's not that old even.
Well, the discussion was, we don't want to extend our project. We only want our project to go to like right here, because if you go past, then you're responsible for all the intersections and the times. That's been a discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted, before we say, oh yeah, sure, or well, let's wait. If we do that, does that now change all the,
I don't think it would
Most-
significantly change that.
okay,
I mean, we're gonna have to build it if we want that corner to go dot, whatever we do there is gonna have to be built to their standards. What we don't want to do is get into rebuilding that whole intersection,
Right.
going through ADA analysis and everything.
yes.
I don't think this impacts that. I think it's more of a right of way deal of having to deal with.
What's compelling them to do this trade now?
That's what I don't understand. And Kevin maybe could speak to that part.
Is Kevin online?
Yes, yes.
Kevin, do you care to comment?
This has been a project that the port has been working on with ODOT for almost 5 years. There's no hurry to do this. This is just just an attempt to correct a lot of the inaccuracies in the map, but it's nobody's top priority.
Okay, so if we asked you to delay that, at a minimum, delay that one little triangle that we're talking about, you think that your board would be comfortable with that?
Yes, we would be totally fine. Like I said, it's not I don't even know when this thing's actually going to be carried out. There's just so much other stuff going on right now. But yeah, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Okay, thank you. So does that answer the question?
Yes, I can respond back to the email and just ask them to not take any action right now
On that
on that,
parcel.
at least that parcel.
Great.
And the reality is only 10% through design, so got a
Probably that-
90% chance that we could affect that intersection anyway that we don't know about yet.
Yeah.
Which is right.
Yeah.
We don't have to.
No.
Okay, so and I think, I'm sorry, Marla, you put something else on the.
Oh, yeah.
The other one was comment day.
So I just want to bring forward, and maybe this is something the governance committee works on, but I think that we're at a point now, and especially on the heels of this news about a cost increase, and I expect more interest. I want to revisit the way we're meeting in terms of access to the public, because meeting during the workday is not genuinely making ourselves accessible. And so I would love to revisit this meeting moving to evening hours, which is typical of many public agencies, so that you create a space that people can hopefully attend. That's really kind of the crux of it. But I do think from this point going forward, it would also be a good show from this authority that we are trying to make when we convene accessible to people that want to start participating or getting involved.
Okay, so the question would be, how can we discuss this? You have a recommendation?
Well, I was thinking
Yeah,
like,
bring it to the
do we
committee.
have it come to go to your committee and that committee can workshop like possible evening options based on, as we mentioned earlier, obviously some of us wear hats that already have evening meetings. Figuring out that timing, is it that this meeting is always a set 2-hour window, like the pacing? I would say, let's revisit all of that with a goal of proposing some options maybe that then we could take a vote on. Like, do we want to shift our schedule to X or Y?
And I think there's also been a periodic discussion about, are we every other week or twice a month, or do we go to 1 month? Seems like we're kind of getting at a point where maybe all of that could be reevaluated.
Yeah, so we can certainly do that in the governance committee. I think, I'm not sure that I brought this up a couple of times and it didn't seem like I was in the center of the discussion, right? I feel like I'm kind of at an edge in saying that I think that we're in a position to move to fewer meetings.
Let's look at that too. I mean, I think.
So, but I'm just saying that in terms of chairing that discussion in the committee, I'm concerned that it may be seen as me pushing in a direction. Now, Jake is also on the committee, so he can push me. I think, did we lose him? I think we lost him, but he would certainly push. Okay, so he would certainly push in the other direction, but I'm wondering if we should just have this as a discussion in the entire body, because the fundamental things like problem with evening meetings is that we may discover that each of us has every night taken, right? Because the number of things that are scheduled evening meetings. I know I have a lot of trouble going to any other government meeting because they're all at the same time. In fact, tonight I may go to the city council meeting. You're going to be hearing about our point in time homeless count, but it can be quite difficult.
No, it's tough for sure. I definitely think that frequency is something to revisit because again, this isn't just about access to the public, but it's about access for people to raise their hand and become commissioners. And we're still making an assumption of privilege. Working class that have paychecks and bosses, I don't know what employer would be okay with saying, I pay for 8 hours, a whole workday a month for you to do this other thing, because that's our pacing right now on Monday afternoons. And so I just think that is also a barrier that we should be, and you're right, that's where I was thinking maybe it needs to go to a committee, because that can be pretty drawn out for us to all workshop collectively, like the evening conflicts potentially and the timing of scheduling. But this is at a point now where we should expect and we should want people here and aware and pushing us and challenging us with questions and comments. And we're not going to get that if we stay meeting from 2 to 4 on Monday afternoons.
Okay, so why don't we, let me propose that we push this to the governance committee. We can have a discussion there. We can look at what some of the options are, but that we'll probably bring back a broad set of considerations rather than a specific proposal. So I don't think we're going to be able to get to I think even if we did have, if Jake and I work out something and say, yeah, we think this is a great idea, I suspect that broader group, with 10 other folks, it's going to be shot down immediately.
Yeah.
So.
I also have a question about staff availability after hours. Look into at that meeting.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you could just change the day. Yeah.
This is back to being a public agency, and it's typical expectation of public agency staff. Now, this is where, again, I would say there's things on the horizon we need to confront. We've structured our authority right now where we have private industry staffing it. But this is normal. In a public agency, staff attends these evening meetings. It doesn't mean there isn't an offset by that employer to get time off maybe on Fridays or something else, but I don't think that should be a limiting factor here. It's actually quite standard.
No, we have to look at the impact.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a holistic approach, not just to add something on after hours. I think.
Yes.
Yeah, not availability, just impact.
And if we can move to one meeting a month instead of two, that might offset the offset.
My only concern with that is we are very rarely able to all to get together and talk in one place legally. And decreasing the amount of that is going to increase the silos, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I do think that we do fill the 2 hours every time. And I don't think we're at a position at this point to decrease the number of meetings. I do think switching the day, I would caution us.
Yeah.
that we can't
Yeah.
really talk freely to everybody about this because we follow the rules, and to be squeaky clean, you gotta be squeaky clean. And I think to maintain that, having more chances to talk about it would be great. However, my employer would be so happy that I don't have to take PTO personally to do this.
Yeah.
And all the community, like if I think you get more diversity of voices if you make it more accessible over time.
And people said that Jake is there. I don't see Jake.
Jake Edwards.
Oh, Mark Anderson, Terry Anderson.
In past meetings, yeah, I raised good points about just, it's our chance too, in convening to continue to build our relationships with each other and, dialogue and trust of, we're gonna make a lot of decisions on this project.
We work when you guys tell us to be here, so don't worry about our time.
You come at like 11 a.m. It'd be nice. Nice.
Cost you any more than.
Monday.
Okay, great. So it sounds like people are comfortable with pushing that off into the governance committee. And if you have specific issues, so probably who should they send specific?
I would say if all of you can send your available like preferred times to Amy, she could create a matrix of available times and we could start there.
But also any other issues that you want to raise, such as concerns about us not having enough time to cover issues and things like that. Because I'm worried about otherwise it could be me having a serial meeting with the entire commission.
Send them all to Amy, CC me on them, we'll put it in the agenda for you to look at.
Great.
Who is on the governance committee?
So it's Jake, myself, and Doug, but Doug has not made very many of the committee meetings. It's tough for him to get to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of the time.
Right.
In the middle of his workday.
I'm not.
He's your litmus test right there. When can we schedule this so you're available?
Totally.
Okay. Great, so that's the new business. And informational items, do we need to cover any of these?
Real quick, I do the FHWA December training. We had 2 people, I think, Amy, that said they could go, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Differently, the Oregon legislative days, we haven't got specific times from them, of course, but if you could let us know your availability that week and if you're interested in going.
Right.
I think we've had one that said, I think you said maybe you could go.
I'm unclear because I'll be in, yeah.
We can get a list of just who is like, hey, yes, include me in some of the days. We can at least get that list started. And then as the dates and times get set up, then we know who pool of people we can reach out to and say, hey, can you make these dates and times? Need that information.
Okay.
We have an RTC board presentation next Tuesday from 4 to 5. Do any of the commissioners want to attend? And I guess one other question I have for you all is, some of these I just go do. Do you all, are you okay with that? Do one of you all want to go with me every time I do a presentation? Are you okay with
RTC.
Transportation Commission?
Oh, RTC.
That's more of like a technical.
It's just a project update. I mean, I typically, I'm okay doing it. I want to make sure you all are okay with it. Okay.
Is it virtual or is it in person?
It'll be in person. This one might actually be virtual.
I think if it's a virtual option, I think that we could. If it's a virtual option, I think the option should be shared with the commission.
Okay.
If they
And
want.
I can let you know, and if somebody wants to participate, then great.
Yeah, and if you can, then you can, but if it's not, I think that just allows us then, you never know if a meeting.
So I'll just start letting you know when one comes up, and I'll plan to do them, and if someone wants to, and I'll work with them to put the presentation together.
The virtuals are easy because I'm sitting there and not doing anything. And every time I listen to you say something, I learn. So to quiz you about later.
Okay, good. At least you learned something. And then ODOT, and this will come back, ODOT, agreement for services, they sent something over for.
Oh, they did.
They did, we just
Okay.
got it.
It's-
Yeah,
it's-
we literally, the day we were having the conversation, we got it.
Got it.
So. It was funny because he asked me about it and literally the day he asked me about it, we got the letter from him. So we will fill it out, bring it back to you at the next board meeting, but we do need to, work with ODOT to get that resolved.
That's basically how
And
we
that's
pay
it.
ODOT for doing stuff for
Yeah,
us.
that's effectively a kind of a government to government kind of relationship. And
Yeah, we have one with WashDOT right now. It's a maximum of 60,000 for them to do their reviews and participate. It's a time and materials thing. They send us a bill and
Okay.
it's a little hard to verify because of their time codes and the way they do their time charges, but we do the best we can.
And I'm starting to get a little confused on the oversight because we were doing everything under ODOT.
We still are.
Requirement. They're the lead agency. There was some discussion about looking to WashDOT standards as kind of base spec standards because they're a little easier to work with.
So the project.
How does that?
The project is not, because it's not an ODOT project, it's not a WashDOT project, is not required to follow either state criteria. We had started with ODOT and said, hey, we had to start somewhere. We said, let's look at ODOT, see if that makes the most sense. And looking at the two and I'm working with the contractor, WashDOT's, this is no offense to ODOT. I'm going to caveat what I'm about to say. WashDOT's specifications package and process is a little more advanced than ODOT's. And there's a preference to go there instead of ODOT because of that. In order to have the specs match the criteria, then it makes sense to do more WashDOT criteria. We still may do some ODOT criteria where it's advantageous to the project, but the intent is to use primarily one or the other. Right now, it's leaning towards using WashDOT's because their spec package is more advanced.
But I thought we also discussed the fact that at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the bridge is designed
to meet their
in such a way that either of the DOTs
correct
would be capable of taking it over without too much angst.
That is correct. So we're still bottom line trying to meet either ODOT or WashDOT criteria, but you really have to kind of pick one or the other to mesh everything together.
Like only use salt on one side of it.
Yeah, and brine on the other, or cinders on one side and salt on the other, or something like that. Yeah.
And this agreement is for ODOT to really kind of look over the shoulder of our contractor and make sure that.
Doing their reviews. Yep, doing their reviews, helping this, if they do the right of way, that would have to be included in there. I think some of Rob's time, if he's still on, is also covered under that. So it's reimbursing them. And they were getting that prior to, it's been a little while since they've asked for this, so. But it would be going forward.
Okay.
So are they able to, but their systems are such that they can oversee they can go and play in the WashDOT system as ODOT, correct? They're not going to have this, well, hang on, I can't actually oversee this project because you're going to the WashDOT.
It's not a matter of getting in their system. It would be how familiar they are with WashDOT's criteria.
Right.
And WashDOT specifications. That's
what I'm saying,
because I don't know that they'll really get into that.
Okay.
So we'll need to work with them on how much they'll actually want to oversight for that and what that will look like to them.
It just,
They don't-
we're just asking for hurdles to be thrown at us if we're.
I mean, it's.
You see where I'm coming?
Yeah, but you can pick up ODOT's process, which is going to be more complex and difficult.
But they understand it.
I know, but the contractor is going to be billing you to have to deal with it and develop materials that don't exist or put it together, which is going to be costly on that side versus it being more streamlined and direct using the WashDOT stuff. And then you're paying ODOT to and they're not in the weeds of really reviewing every specification. They're overseeing the project. We'll be the ones reviewing it.
It seems like this is an unavoidable cost of the fact this is a non-system.
This is the main thing Mike Fox wanted me to make sure that I was asking questions, so you all heard this, because this decision could potentially, again, it's one of the 100 decisions.
It's better for the project this way than it is because ODOT's not in the weeds of reviewing the specs and that stuff.
Okay. You've been informed. I mean, that's
right. Thanks for that. So we were to the upcoming action items.
I had a question on
Okay.
the Kiewit memo that was
Yes.
in our packet.
Yep.
Yeah, that was all.
So if I'm reading number 3 correctly, we were providing to Kiewit by October 21st, cash flow projections.
We gave them our cash flow based on the funding that we have right now. Both what we actually have it to have against versus what we think's coming in and when. That's what we gave them. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just, I guess my question was, so when are we expecting that back, or is there now a date?
So with their, at the end of the year, we're gonna get their baseline schedule. What we've asked them to provide to us is I don't want to dictate the starting point of when they're gonna start the work. Or the cash flow that they need to meet the 2 dates that really are in the contract. Really, one's primarily in the contract. That is the final completion by 2031. I couldn't remember the month. I think it's October 31st, 2031. Then there's the goal of having the project open by October 1st of 2029. I want Kiewit to own that schedule and come back to us and say, here's the cash flow we need, and here's the schedule, and here's when we need to start to meet both of those dates. And then we can make a decision based on what they tell us as to how we want to move forward. But I can tell them, hey, I want you to start on this date. It just puts constraints on them that I don't think we need to put on them. I think they need to own the schedule and tell us what needs to be done. And they'll come back and tell us the cash flow. And then we're gonna have to have decisions about whether we actually have that cash flow, whether we can get that cash flow, go back to them and say, hey, we can't do that, but we can do this. Does that impact it? All those conversations will have to happen, but I think they need to give us a baseline first, and then we will respond to that baseline.
That way you're not dictating the baseline.
We're not dictating the baseline to them. They,
Takes and these are the other
right,
pieces.
they should be the one owning the schedule and owning the cash flow. And then we just respond to what we have available and what we can do to actually make a difference to that. But they need to tell us what the cash flow is and what the schedule is.
We can do it or we can't.
Yes. And if we can review it. And we will, we'll look at their schedule and look how they put it together and see if it makes sense and whether they can move it or adjust, and we'll have that conversation. But I want them to own the initial submittal of it.
Any other questions on that memo? Okay, let's move on. The upcoming action items, which ones do we need to talk about?
I don't think there's anything here. These are just a to-do list.
Okay. In that case, we have a presentation by this Michael Shannon guy.
Amy, are you pulling it up?
Actually, for 15 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, but we're 7 minutes early, so he actually gets 22 minutes.
I mean, it's great to hear that.
Yeah.
All right. So
I keep meetings on time.
stop me where you have questions, please.
Stop.
Or no, yeah.
Wherever you want to be. So we're gonna talk about the timeline. We'll talk about kind of the PC update. We're talking about the project progress. And then what I really want to focus on is the VIP application and the last part. The first 4 pieces are actually a couple quick slides, but I really want to talk about where the project is as far as the VIP application, what our qualifications are in that application, and really kind of put maybe some confidence back in that we do qualify very well for a VIP grant. And hopefully leave with you guys feeling a little more confident that our application is actually worth $32 million. So go ahead. So this is kind of the timeline of the cost estimate we started out with. We had a baseline that was done in October 2021. Our intent was to do a baseline OPC, and OPC stands for opinion of probable cost. So when you see that, you can basically relate that to an estimate.
You've been trained really well.
I'm working on that very hard, but you wouldn't have no idea how much I work on that. And then, so the end of phase 1A has been December of this year. That was when we were intending to get our first estimate update. And then we will do another update of that at the preliminary design. And I'll use percentages just because people like percentages. Roughly is about 60%. That'll be in the fall of 2025. Again, those exact dates will be identified in this schedule. And then we will do additional design work towards final plans, and we'll get another OPC at the end of phase 1B. That then will be turned into a price agreement where we'll start into construction. So, yes.
Are we just being told right here that we're not gonna hit inward or work window of fall 2025? Is that what this graph just so shows?
We
for
are not
everybody?
gonna hit.
Okay, so everyone-
Window in fall of 2025.
Okay.
That is one of the reasons in getting the question, that is one of the reasons in getting the schedule from Kiewit is for them to tell us their starting date and how that impacts what work windows they need to hit.
Okay, so I think that's really important for communications now, and we should probably stop saying construction starts fall 2025 as a board.
Yes.
And so Dan had updated the, it's not a talking point, what,
I think I called it a background there.
the background. So Dan updated the background to say that I was actually a little surprised to see that in there because I didn't know.
It hadn't been officially been.
I didn't either.
Yeah, okay.
It would, and we can talk about that. There is no way we're gonna meet it with the cash flow that we have right now. There's no way we're meeting the October 2025 start date. We don't have the cash flow in order to do the buys that Kiewit needs to do in order to meet that schedule, especially at $1 billion project cost. There's no way we have the cash available for the project to do that.
We didn't think we had it.
It was
6 months ago.
correct. It was questionable. We thought that they could come up with ways to do it and that we could do some early procurements to meet it. There's no way we can do that now with $1 billion price tag, the amount of money that they would need to procure materials. There's no way.
The way
So-
that this happened without a discussion here, without acknowledgement, doesn't seem right to me.
So technically, what I'm telling you is this is what you're gonna see at the end of the year. So we are supposed to get a baseline schedule from Kiewit at the end of the year that tells us how they're gonna meet 2029. Maybe I should revise what I'm saying. I am anticipating that that's gonna show us that we are not gonna be able to meet the 2025 date. Based on being $1 billion contract and the materials that we'll need to buy, I don't know how we have the cash flow to meet that.
So I'm just concerned because as a contractor, you get your gear ready to go, even though you don't have it procured, you get your cranes set aside to build this steel bridge. You move them, you mob cost, and you're not bidding at their projects because those are already tied up in this area to build a steel bridge here starting fall 2025. A crane that's not working is losing money. And so if I was on Kiewit's board, personally, I would want those cranes working immediately. And there's other projects up and down the coast that are biddable that need cranes. So I'm just concerned because we just moved this here in this meeting and this is, yes, I did read it and I'm very well aware we're not gonna make the fall, but I want to make sure
I
everyone's,
understand you.
I want to make sure that
Yeah.
like this is huge. And if I was Kiewit, they know we're not getting in the fall. So have we had the hard conversations to say, like, we do not want James Shear moving to a different project because now the board, we don't want the construction manager still engaged. We hired the team that we hired based on this initial timeline, but
The
are
contract,
they being moved?
the contract commitments
Okay,
only ever to have final completion by October of 2031.
understood. And you're asking them for the timeline to put that.
For
Yep.
a self-imposed start date
Right.
to encourage everybody to focus on getting the project done. The only contract commitment that Kiewit currently has is the 2031 date. There's a goal of 2029 to have them open the bridge by 2029. Again, that was a project goal. That is not a contract commitment. So we have asked them to give us a schedule that maintains the project goal of October of 2029. What they're going to come back and tell us, they may say, we need to start by October of 2025.
And this
I'm
is what it
telling you,
takes to
you
start.
don't have the cash flow to start by October of 2025.
I agree.
So I think like something you just said cuts to the root, I think, where a lot of frustration has been growing, at least for me. So self-imposed. I want to break that down. Was that a board vote where we said this, we are starting fall 25? Because this has been a talking point that we have owned and messaged and visualized multiple times. And it makes me think about the 15% design that we messaged and owned
Just
multiple
10.
times. But I want to cut to the core here, which is a very clear breakdown we're having on this project as an authority and with how we are being surrounded by professionals we're assuming are guiding us the right way. So like, where is that coming from? Is that a commissioner? Is that a committee that's created those? Like,
So when we first started the project, we established a project schedule. That project schedule was in order to meet the 2031 and the 2029 dates. We established a start date for the project of when we thought we needed to be in the water in order to meet that, knowing that the concrete option was a 4-year period for construction and then a 2-year period, 2 to 3 year period for demo. So in order to meet that contract requirement of 2031, we backed into, well, then we have to be in the window. We have to get in the window in 2025 in order to meet those requirements. When Kiewit came in and said, hey, we can actually go to steel, we can save you a year, it lightened up that, but there was no reason to take the foot off the gas and say, well, let's go to 2026. We said, well, let's continue.
Let's hold there for a second though, 'cause so there was a decision made. Hewitt comes forward and says, we can do steel rather than concrete. It will save you money, it will save you time.
Correct.
That never came back here as anything other than a observation.
Correct, because at that time, remember, we did a presentation in June and said, we're going to steel, here's the potentials that it has. We had not gotten any detailed estimates. We still don't technically have a detailed estimate to it. We've got a green sheet that says, here's where we think the project cost is gonna be. So there was no decisions or board decisions to be in there other than to update you guys that, hey, Kiewit has said they think they can do this a year quicker. And we think that they can do it, that steel has the potential to be a lower cost than a concrete option. That's what we presented in June.
Right.
Right.
We were kind of backed into that conclusion, and now we're being backed into another conclusion based on cash flow. That you can clearly, I'm sure that you are correct, that we do not have the cash flow to do the pre-orders. And your representative 5 pointed that out when we met in Vancouver. But that said, it is a little mushy how we're jumping to there's a distance between having these discussions about what the implications are of facts that are presented to us and actually saying, okay, here's our new narratives.
Right.
Right. And that's where I was concerned when I saw the narrative and at first I was shocked to see that we're no longer saying fall 2025. And then it's like the next sentence is like, but it doesn't change the end date of the project. It's still available, but that's like, okay, well, these are both new things to me. I don't feel like there's been a decision. And maybe there is no decision.
There is no decision to make because contractually you are only committed to the 2031 date. So there is really no decision.
but here's where that breaks.
Needed to be made.
That breaks down because the 2031 is not a year or number we have owned with our communities or any of the stakeholders. So I want to stop doing that. And if that is coming from the board, a impression you're getting managing this project for us, that there has not been an action, but we have all been lockstep on this. There's the clock. I want to get rid of it. Turn that off right now. I want to quit owning anything. I will not say things if I can't back them up. And I, as a commissioner, feel betrayed by where we are in this project because we have all been saying things we have been led to believe are true for longer than what it sounds like facts have come forward to indicate that's not going to happen. So if there was insight 6 months ago that a fall 25 window was not going to happen, I want the space created where you feel and anyone on this project feels like the right thing to do is to be saying that in a transparent, open way, because it will always come out eventually. And we are on the line with our integrity on this project, and we're the ones that have been building trust. And I think that trust is fragile right now. And so if we need to stop, if we just need one talking point, which is a new bridge is 2031, I would rather own that than thinking we're doing A+ work by getting into all the weeds and keeping track of a lot of details that it sounds like are going to continue to be fluid. And every time they change, it degrades what we are building up and we have examples locally to look to of other agencies that have misstepped in this space, and I don't want to misstep. And so we're a team here. But if we have not been creating a space because you're hearing from us and inferring that is pressure to meet a 29 opening.
Is that 29 date right there? Is that, okay, like if we are just saying that contractually it's 2031,
Yeah.
but then
There's two different.
I understand, but hang on, Mike, hang on. This is a piece of data that we all,
Project goal.
But
it doesn't say project, it says bridge opening countdown to
Yeah.
10/1/2029. It's not, it doesn't say bid opening countdown goal. And I understand, this is great. We had it from the beginning, it was for the interviews, it was great. But like if I have information that's like ABC is true, but really it's not true and it's a different talking point and it's like maybe it's a little gray and then it changes to CDE but it goes back because what happened when we changed to steel is we had an all hands stop for the NEPA process and it added 2 months on us negotiating. And now we're covering our butts and going back and we're saying we're going in the water in fall 2025. That's on the slides that we're going to be presenting. That is not true. And we're telling nations that, and that's the different native tribes that we've been presenting. We've all said fall 2025. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes, but the date has changed and we're negotiating tribal nations. And what you're doing is you're creating trust. And yet again, we're telling them, no, wait, now it's still, no, wait, now we're going to be in the water later. No, wait, now we're doing this. And I understand the design is where it is, but this kind of slide where if you didn't know what this said and you just like wrote down the date, it's like, oh, okay, great. This is where we're supposed to find out that it's a group that the date was changed to fall 26. And I feel like I am very aware of a lot that's going on because the committee I sit on, and I may misspeak by accident to a commissioner because they're not in the know. And that's not
and
fair.
we need to all be in the same know. Like the committees are supposed to be delegation to make efficiencies on things that need to move, but not to silo critical information. And I just, especially in the current climate, nationally, I don't think any of us would support this project going in a place where we are not appreciating the gravity of things we are saying and owning, and then just being flippant about, well, no, like that was nothing.
How are we going
That
to
is
do? Yeah.
This general environment people have of feeling gaslit on important issues or projects. And for our communities, this is an important project. And right now, in like one conversation, we have basically crossed off every key point that any commissioner has at different points confidently put their face and name and voice to for at least a year on this project, and it's not okay. So I again, like if the only thing I ever say anymore is 2031, then that's all I want to say. But we need to figure out a way to not continue this, because in dismissing some of the concerns we're raising, that's concerning too. Like, and that's that combination of like technical expertise into like public facing messaging. And we're not gonna be able to work together if we don't understand that this part ultimately is gonna carry more weight.
So what I would say is that the project is going to evolve, right? And what we've been speaking to is the facts that we knew until we get new information. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. You've worked on projects, you know.
I understand, but
Think
it's
that
not, it's
There's
different.
a more responsible way to do this, and I think we're learning in real time, but yeah, quick back of the napkin, I think we've been irresponsible. Like, maybe we got a little over our skis in the excitement of momentum we had on this project, but this feels, I just keep pointing to this countdown, that feels irresponsible right now. Fall 2025, like, if, as that was starting to deteriorate as a possibility, that conversation needs to be brought forward. That decision from Steele, those implications on other parts of the project like NEPA, that we're a public agency. All that's supposed to be in this public forum so that we are all hearing it and not staying. We've been maintaining a fall 25 date.
But until we got Kiewit on board and we heard in June that there was a potential of a change of that, we didn't know any different. That's what we thought we were going to be able to do. So you really only have known this for 3 months.
But I think go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the issue, as I see it, is that there were clearly things are going to be discovered, which means that things that we thought we could do, we can't do. And that's in any engineering project, you're going to discover things like that. And there was a change that was made, or there were new facts that were discovered. And, namely the depth. Let's leave the inflation out because that's a completely different subject. But the depth of the bedrock was discovered, and the discussion about the potential impact, I don't think was clear enough or broad enough at the commission level. And I certainly did not have an understanding of. I mean, I heard about it that, hey, it has to be deeper. It may cost some more, but Hewitt's come up with this idea of switching to steel, and that'll make it cheaper because you need one less in water window, so we can accelerate our schedule, is what we said then, and we can have fewer peers. So overall, I was expecting, well, it's not going to come out in the wash, but it's going to be pretty close to being.
And we were expecting, personally, I was expecting the same thing.
So I would think at that point, I don't think we had enough of a discussion about what are the potential impacts. So that there must be some process by which, because there's nothing that was discovered between then and now, that we could not have known.
Except the pricing.
The pricing.
We didn't know how Kiewit was going to price it. They didn't know what their foundation sizes were.
But they
didn't know what their concrete prices were. So they knew there was going to be an increase. The magnitude of that increase, we did not know.
But there was no communication that there would be an increase, right? I had no appreciation of
how significant.
magnitude.
Yeah,
we didn't know that until Kiewit gave us a number that we just got in October. They gave us a ballpark in June that said this project is going to be significantly more than what you all think. We all thought that was bullshit, frankly.
When did they know?
But that's significantly more.
In June, when they came in and they looked at the project and we did the steel versus concrete, they said this project is potentially going to be significantly more than what you all think it is today. We did not believe those numbers. Our numbers and
why didn't
we hear that?
Why didn't that get discussed until June? And then secondly, why didn't we hear that?
It was discussed at the ENC committee meetings, and there was not enough detail to bring it to the board, which
that's the salary thing that
there was no known. So if there was not enough known information to bring you that, other than to say there was going to be
but there was enough known to make us take an action to shift from concrete to steel. We took that action. So
and that had downstream impact.
Yeah. And that's again, that sentence, this will result in a significant increase, is much more, I will say, confident than what my understanding was in that meeting about cost savings. The way it was framed to me felt like we are still playing in the range of 520. This will keep us closer to 520. So hearing the word significant, we're all going to interpret differently. But I think for each person, whatever their lived experience is, you hear significant, you're going to pay attention. So I just am curious, and I think it's Arthur's point, that feels disingenuous to say, or it's potentially the threat of these silos, because somewhere a decision was made, not here, but to keep that from us, the part of significant, but there was felt enough known that we needed to all make a vote on concrete versus steel, and that was withheld.
But we didn't know the number of that.
But I think we're saying it's,
I mean, hindsight, yes, could we have said there was a bigger impact? But we didn't know what that impact was.
but you knew enough for us to take a vote.
So
Right, because we knew that steel was better than concrete.
I think that what should have happened at that point is an identification of what we don't know, what has now become unpinned. We had a bunch of things pinned to the board, to use a bad analogy, but a bunch of things pinned to the board. And at a certain point, we had information that said, you know what? This placement of these pins is very questionable. We don't know where we're going to be placing these, but these things are no longer confident. So at least we can stop saying things that aren't true. You keep on nodding. So why don't you speak for yourself?
Same thing. It changes the common strategy. It changes what we're saying to everybody. It changes our dates, changes our structure, changes everything else that we're taking out to everyone, just knowing that one bit of information.
Yeah, Jake has his hand up.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jake. I didn't know you're back. Welcome back.
Thank you. I apologize. I lost service and I lost some of the conversation. I came back and it was quite animated. So I'd just like to remind everyone that this is a progressive design build. This is exactly the reason why the subcontractors do not want to give us numbers or give us information until they're fully certain. Because if they do give us the information that they're not certain on, then we jump to conclusions and things like that. We don't have a firm number. We don't, and we won't until the end of phase 1A, and that's part of what they've given us. All we have is a green sheet, which is a top-down estimate, not a bottom-up estimate. In order to come up with that bottom-up estimate, it cost $1 million. What we did know is way back when we first brought Kiewit on our first meetings, they said, you need to look at these prices because it looks like it's low. And we talked to KMC, and KMC's, we put all the best and brightest together, those bridge engineers, and they said, yeah, from what we're seeing, it looks like it's going to be a little bit more. And it scared, we all said, well, how much? And then, of course, they're not going to give us numbers because we would have these conversations all the time. We have to realize that this project is a progressive design build where we've been into it for a while now. We've got a while to go. Yes, the numbers has blown us all away. I think it took everyone, even our owners, rep by surprise. And we've got to deal with it as best we can. I think we're trying to throw people under the bus, and what I'm not hearing is what are we doing going forward? We're putting in for a $500 million application. What happens if we don't get them? That's the conversations that I think that will be more beneficial to us because we don't know what the number is. We still don't know what the number is, and we won't until the end of the year.
I think you're missing a key part of the context, which is we are having this conversation in the interest of moving forward more effectively as an authority and with more transparency of information. Much of what you just closed, again, was information being gleaned only in small circles, either only with chairs or committees. And I'm saying as a commissioner, I'm uncomfortable with that. This is new, not just for this authority, but for our communities. And we are doing a disservice by not assessing how we have landed in a place right now where we're backtracking on a lot of the key things we've embraced and moving forward in a different way so that we don't continue these bad practices.
So if I think Jake made a good point that we don't want to get into a situation, we don't want to accentuate the situation where the contractor is afraid to give us any number because they think that we're going to make conclusions, that we're going to take that number beyond what it actually means. The problem that I see is a little different. It's that we never identified what is no longer known. Mm-hmm. And that should have been explicit. And that my request would be that moving forward, we should identify what are assumptions that we have confidence in and what are ones that we don't have confidence in. And that should be shared.
And we will do that. And we will do that. And if I go to some more slides, we can talk about what we're going to do going forward. So these are where you're going to get OPC updates. This is where you're going to get estimate updates. You're going to get one at the end of this year. You're going to get an official update when we get to 60%, and you'll get one at the end of the project. And then we'll move on into construction if we choose to go that. Let's go to the next slide.
Just the price agreement is basically the bid process.
The bid process. So skip that part, keep going. It's what we just talked about. I mean, we can go back if you want to read it, but it basically says we did one for the BIP. We did that one in October. That was a green sheet. It was a tops down. It wasn't a bottoms up. We won't get the bottoms up until December. So this is just to kind of reiterate the project's progress and what we've gotten done and what we're continuing to move forward, getting done. Go ahead. So this is where our current estimate is. We started out at 520. We had increases due to inflation. We had increases due to unknown information that we now know. And then there's still a large amount of that number that is based on percentages. So your contingency is a percentage of that. Your design right now is still a percentage of that. Our owner's costs are still a percentage of that. So there's still a lot of numbers there that are going to fluctuate. One thing that we get put into, and as part of this process, and it's not a perfect process, in order to go to the estimating agencies or grant agencies and the federal government to get funding for this project, you've got to have a number that you go to them with. Otherwise, if you go to them with a range, they look at you and say, when you know, come back to us and talk to us, and you won't get anything until you get the project design. So part of it is you have to have a number that you take to them that is your most confident current number. And you have to use something to say this is what the project cost is. Now, should we put caveats around that? You see IBR doing that now, right? They used to say this was a $6 million estimate or billion. Now they're saying this is a 5.5 to 7.5. We should probably do this. We should start to do the same thing. And that when we talk about this, it is not an exact number. You will not get an exact number until you see the price from the contractor when you put this out to bid. That's when you'll know exactly what this price costs.
If we put it out to bid, because we're right
No
now,
matter what, you,
all right.
at some point you put it out
It's
to
the
bid.
price that they're going to.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
You'll
it's
get a
just,
price. That's the
like-
only time you actually know the price of this project.
Explain.
Until then, it's an estimate.
You have owner's contingency cost as one of the increases. We didn't change our contingency. We should change the percentage. You're saying
So-
that give us a percentage of it.
We haven't distributed the contingencies into buckets. The owner contingency we've kept right now is 30% of the construction number. So that's that.
We can change that
270.
from.
You can change, well, you will change it as you know more about the project.
This is a list of changes since the.
This is the change since the previous number. So this isn't the current number
Since October 20.
because you're taking a percentage of the new contract number. So instead of it being 484, it's 770 something. So 30% of that number instead of 30% of the smaller
But
number.
effectively, that's also the same as saying that the increased inflation. Well, okay, because
Is as much as.
it's not just the escalation, it's the new. Right, because we've added the foundation part, so it's percentage of.
That on top of it,
foundation. Okay.
correct.
Okay, that's fair.
So that, and then we did some decreases due to the design changes that saved about 63 million. So that's how we got to the 1.1 now. And if you want to get into all the details, we can sit down and go through all the details as well, but that's kind of a high level of where the numbers are.
I think this is high level, but if not, we can talk later in details. But to me, that second line, increased inflation, and then the fourth line, increased programmatic design engineering.
Yeah.
Is that not duplicity going on?
That's not
Like,
at all.
so we're seeing inflation in the second line, but that fourth line, what is that?
Those are percentages of something. So typically what you do at this stage is like your design fee is typically 6 to 8% of your construction cost. Just because we being Kiewit has not sat down and said, okay, how many plan sheets is this going to be? What's going to be on the plan sheets? What's our structure look like? How many structure details do we need? And built up an estimate for design. They typically at this stage will just say, well, it's about 6 to 8% of the construction.
So a different way to look at it is if you look at the second line is basically 40-something% on top of the first line. Right, because we said this is.
But that's the part that's weird to me, because like, obviously that's, we're starting with the 520 that built in those 6 to 8% of design or whatever, to certain process. So now you're just doing a blanket, like, okay, inflation, and that's the increase. So what is the unique thing that is the increased programmatic and design engineering? Because it can't be that, because that's captured in the 520 and already multiplied.
It's not. In the 520, you took and you said, okay, design's going to be 6 to 8% of the construction value of $484 million. Right? What we're saying now is that 6 to 8% is now 6 to 8% of the total construction cost of 990 million. So that number changes because it's 30% of a bigger number.
So
So that's what I mean by those being percentages, is we haven't negotiated the design fee. So right now, Kiewit has 70 million in their cost estimate for design. We may negotiate that down to 35. Well, you just saved $45 million on the project. But we haven't done that, so we don't know. So they just put a percentage in as a placeholder of what typically it costs on a project to do design fee.
So in the memo that we received from Ready, the inflation that they were stated was 46.3%. That was based on Q1 of 2021 and Q1 of 2024 and the FHW thing. So I'm looking at this memo that I received, that we all received, and I'm looking, and now it's 51.3. This is from Ready to all of us, the special meeting, the initial time, the initial time we got the price increase. So hang on, I'm not, and what I'm not doing is I'm not throwing anyone on the bus.
Yeah.
So I want to be real clear that nothing I've said, and nothing I'm saying is throwing anyone on the bus, and I don't think that we as an authority ever want to have that be said, that we're not doing that. We're
No.
trying to do
You
what's
want to
best for the
understand how
project.
you got from 46.
And Reddy, I see your hand, but yeah, my question is that, and when we're coming at these numbers and we get the data and we've asked for the deep dive and we've gotten a deep dive, but the numbers keep, the percentages keep, 48, 46,
So here's the thing,
51.
When you're in the weeds and you're in the sausage making, that's what you're gonna get. Because when we sent that, what they were using was what, we didn't know when the Q3 in that chart represented October, or did it represent December?
So
What we
did we-
found out is if you back off and go to the Q2, which actually represents the end of the month, then that added that difference in percentage. That's how it's different between 46 and 51. So if you want
The numbers
something that is
is-
exact,
I don't want
I tell
to,
you to wait until we know exactly.
Mike, I'm just saying, what it feels like is, what it feels like is we put an application for this much money and now we're backing it in. And that's what a consultant.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what it feels like, but but all the data, and maybe Reddy, tell me what, if that is the actual reason why all these numbers are different, but we're getting all these different percentages and all these different numbers, and
So we took a slide out of this because if you're not in the weeds and understanding what the numbers are, it is confusing, because our other slide, it didn't add up. You couldn't take the other slide and add it because this is showing the increase above what was in the other number.
got it.
So in order to know, like, you've seen a number that said in contingencies 243, 273, whatever it is.
Right. What I see is, I see a fine tuning that happened, and that can be, infuriating to Dan, who's communicating it externally. But there's a pretty reasonable explanation for where those adjustments happen. So I'm less concerned about that. And in terms of this being a sort of backing into a number, we had an open discussion where we looked at each of these elements and we discussed it.
Yep.
And what we decided to do is to change. What we saw is that the contingency had been reduced to make something fit under $1 billion.
Right.
And we all discussed and agreed that that's
Makes sense.
not real. It makes no sense. Why would we be doing that? So we undid something that was backing into a number and instead took the organic number and went with that. That's how I view this.
And that's why this is not, like, when you read the contingency, this is the increase of what was included in the 520
Right.
plus
30% of the
within your
construction.
Well,
Right,
it's a
and
good-
the
yes,
construction
it's a great
staff.
incentive. So if he wants to jump in, if somebody add.
Just trying to clear some of that up, I think one of the key narratives that to focus on is the difference is the 520 estimate was again translated into a 2024 dollars as well. We kind of, did that. And then the difference between the current estimate we put together is that is the difference here. That's why the math, doesn't exactly add up and you think we're backing into it, but that's not the case. And I think one other point was we definitely are not double dipping into the lines 2 and 4. Those are already Mike was trying to explain, this is the cost difference on the increased cost. So we already backed into that, the 2021 to 24 assumed increase and took that out. And what we're seeing as the difference between the current estimate was that.
Okay, so ready. So I see that the second line on this picture is a percentage of the first line. This is based on 2021, moving it forward to the increased escalation to get it to 2024. Originally it was estimated in 2024, but turned out that number was different. So increase that acceleration there. But then the third line is new. And then I understood the fourth line is a percentage of the third line.
So where is what is the fourth one?
It's not?
Ready, pull up Mike's spreadsheet.
Yeah, because it says developed as percentage of construction costs.
Let's go back. We'll walk through every number. It's the only way to get through it.
Yep, give me 1 sec.
So, but part of if I go back to what Marla had said initially, that there's talking points that we're communicating to the public, and there's a whole lot more going on just at the level we're at. And then if you go down to what Mike's dealing with or Reddy or the rest of the team, there's a whole lot more going on. And it's not a linear process, it's an iterative process. So things go up, things go down, you come up with a different idea and everything changes. You can't necessarily track them around. That's part of the design process. But what it tells me is that we need to have a better kind of filter about what we're talking about.
We need to give you.
You're the capture, which was said kind of incredulously of like, hey, guys, we're not as far along as you think. But no, we have then manipulated a perception. We had an entire summer of design aesthetics work, an open house. We are looking at pictures. We have this countdown clock. We have embraced all these other talking points, giving the public these expectations like this train has left the station and it's rolling forward. And so we have to reconcile now that we are owning that because that has been our truth into the community. And we cannot be flippant and disregard that we did that and say, no, what were you guys thinking? We're only at 10%. We're not even at 10%. That's not okay. And that's what I think is clashing right now in a positive way. Again, like this is where projects and leaders rise or fall. We have hit a tough spot. We're trying to work together transparently to be better. So I'm just indicating, because maybe we've all not been on the same page, but like we've been running in this comms world with a lot of outreach, with these open houses, with these things, and we now have created a public that believes this project is much farther. So it is very disingenuous for us to now try to embrace a thing of like, no, guys, you weren't that far. So how do we confront that in a way that is genuine, but reset everyone's expectations and maybe need to own that we got a little excited or a little ahead and not be, I just think that is the way that this moves forward and maintains trust. I think starting to just be oh, what were you talking about? Then we are willfully gaslighting people. Like we've led them into a reality that we've created. And so how do we connect those two again is my thing.
I think again, it's identifying what do we actually know and what don't.
Yeah. And we stick to only what we know.
Being more clear about saying, this, we don't know this, but there are certain areas where you're going to be talking to people about suppositions or about best, this is our best understanding of this, and just don't be shocked if something changes in this. And yeah, some people are mature enough to appreciate and take it for what you're saying, and other people will get into an argument with you asking for you to sharpen a dull blade, right?
Information you don't know.
Yeah. Tell us in more detail what you don't know, and that's.
And I apologize if it came across that way, but I think that we've been trying to say that, and that we know what we know at the period of time we're at.
Well, maybe we're getting more mature in understanding what you're saying, but
yeah,
what we're identifying is that we did not understand. So we have to figure out how to. It's again. I think Catherine keeps on making the point that we're not trying to find blame for this. We're trying to identify how.
And I want to make sure that we're communicating with you guys so that you understand where the project is, right? And where we're at in the process, because this is new, especially for a lot of you of a project of this size to see changes in the amount of money when you see a change and where we are in this project.
I think it would be helpful, correct me if I'm wrong, even if we don't have numbers necessarily, we have assumptions, we have a clock on the wall.
Yep.
So even if we had changes to our assumptions, we didn't necessarily need numbers,
right?
But we needed to know, hey, the assumptions we have might change.
Yep.
And so we needed to reassess or refigure how we communicated those assumptions.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to there.
Right.
That was the problem.
Yep.
So not getting the number, but just, hey, we don't know if this assumption is precise enough as we need it to be in order to communicate these promises that we're making.
Sure. And so
that's what we need from QA.
In my engineering, it's always in the back of the envelope calculations that you do. And I understand in civil engineering, it's not quite done the same way.
Yeah.
But what I do see is a situation where we were told the foundations have to be significantly deeper. Okay.
Things may change.
What's the range of possibilities? Are we talking factor of 2? Are we talking orders of magnitude? Are we for
When
what
we
effect
send
that would have on a project like this. And, experienced engineers have feelings like, oh boy, this is, turned out, we were planning a project to go to the moon and now they've changed and say we're actually going to Mars. That's actually, it's further away.
I guess that's kind of where we were in June, was basically saying that we see an impact to the project. Keywood had not done enough design to be able to tell you the magnitude of that change.
But
That's where we are.
The bracketing of that is something that. we
Yeah.
don't have.
And maybe we could have bracketed it.
So let's think about that.
Or we need
bigger
more direct language. Yeah, like, again, I think.
Treat us like we're dumb.
Well, it's also it's also not putting out, it's hard to explain to people that there's ranges. People want answers, right? And when you tell them, then it's like, well, why don't you know? So maybe we need to have more of those.
And design that
Yeah.
you should not be scared about the question of why don't you know? The answer is because of 100% design. And this is my only thing. Kiewit should not be telling us how much this project should be.
Why?
As we should have a estimate. I mean, it's done this way with government work. This is how much it costs to dredge this area. Let's get all our contracts in. If it's 25% over the initial government estimate, then they ask, why is it more expensive? I feel like we are in charge of getting this bridge built. And I love James and the team. I have the utmost respect for Kiewit. So I hope that's not coming across this way. But when we keep saying, well, Kiewit didn't know, it's like, hang on, guys. You're smart. Why, Drew, when I heard the first thing, so I'm saying we have to drive the information being released, and we cannot wait for a contractor who does not live here and answer to the public to tell information. So when we say it's going to be more expensive, well, how much? Well, we don't know because it's 10% design. That's a legit answer. Like, it's going to be more expensive because the foundations will be deeper. How much more expensive? We don't know. We're at 10% design. That's a truthful estimate. We're going to change now the fall work window to 2026 because of cash flow increases. I think that's positive to say, because here, everyone call your state representatives, let's get us more cash. Like, we should not be scared of saying the truth because it might look weird or we doesn't know what we're doing. We do know what we're doing. We are very competent. We're a competent group of people that are running this project. And I feel like the numbers on this match what he sent us, except for the inflation. And you answered the question about inflation. So I don't think we need to go through all the numbers because we have them very much clear. But all I'm saying is, when staff sends us the answers to the questions that we've asked, and then in the next meeting, we get new updated numbers that are, a couple percentages here, a couple percentages here, that causes me concern, because I was very confident after the multiple times we got to talk to Reddy about this in the group setting. So your staff did very well, is what I guess I want to make sure that's clear. What's unclear is if it keeps changing, I'm going to lose trust in the project. If the answers keep changing, if we keep shifting, it's like, come on, guys, like inflation doesn't change that much.
We need more Caroline time.
Sarah, you're on the hot mic.
So the project is going to continue to change.
Is there something I can help you with?
God, I hope so. Please, please, I hope, please.
The project is
So
going to continue
that's
to change.
something, Mike, and to the group, like that's exactly right. This whole process is like iterative, and like we're going through and looking at the design, and we're pricing things out roughly, and we're like, oh my gosh, why does that cost so much? Let's look at like what are ways that we can make that less costly. Oh, that adds a little bit of cost over here. How are we going to mitigate that? And those are things that take time, and it's hard to give. It's a 48% cost increase, or is it a 52% cost increase? And then it makes us really apprehensive to give you a number when it's like, well, what do you mean it changed 4% in 3 days? Well, yeah, we got some new information. I guess we need to open up those lines of communication. I agree, and I think some of it is difficult because there is a touch point that the Kiewit group has with HNTB and KMC and the group, and we're talking every day, but we don't get to meet with the authority every day. So we have a 2-hour period once every other week to be able to convey as much information as we possibly can. And it's hard to pack in that much detailed information into a 4-hour meeting and have a good discussion about it.
So I think, I think we need to develop a mechanism for understanding and appreciating what's known and what's not known. I mean, what is in ink and what is in pencil and what is in crayon? Is that?
Here's an example. Here's an example, folks, is like the access to build the bridge over the water for the first 800 feet, 800 or 900 feet coming off of the Washington shore. We don't have a good, right now, we don't have information that provides us excellent access from the land to get equipment down there to build that.
Do you have maybe some budget for some Zodiacs or something? No, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. We need amphibious landing craft from the military to get in there. Now, there's a way to do that, but then that's what we've priced in right now, and it's costly. It'd be a lot easier to set up a crane or something on the Washington shore and build access out away, or put in some other sort of access other than I talked about, that causeway stuff. But those are things like that's kind of evolving in real time.
You open or not? Yeah.
I mean, I think there's something there that I don't know.
Causeway, it's just like.
Here's a perfect example. This is a good example.
Yes, it is.
There is a potential to build a causeway, right, that would be cheaper.
Much cheaper.
Travel land to do that. We can't just come in here in the meeting and say that. Because somebody in the public's going to go run to the tribe and say, they're going to build something through the TFAS site. And that's not what we said. Then we're trying to manage what 40 people heard us say. Until we have the conversation with BIA, until we have the conversation with each one of the tribes, until we get the biological opinion revised, until we get FHWA to say okay, until we get ODOT to say okay, we have no idea whether we can do that or not.
Why wouldn't you just bring it forward just like that and say there is a possibility?
Because as soon as I take PFAS site and access across it, I get 4 people that call me that night and go, you can't do that. That's illegal. You can't do that. You promised this. You promised that. You said you weren't going to do that. Why are you doing that? Why couldn't you go over here?
You can say in the meeting that you have to request that, and it has not been requested.
I know, but I'm just giving you what we get, and it's what we get, is nobody hears that part. They just hear the TFAS, you cross the TFAS site and they quit listening. And then we get, well, why are you doing that?
But I think we've course corrected a little too dramatically in the other direction, where that fear of those moments, and you can't control all of that, but this is a public project with public dollars. And James brings up a good point. This is new, a progressive design build for many of us at the table, but different also for our communities. And so I think what's more effective in these meetings are those kinds of still high level updates of, hey guys, here's a quick capture of some of the things we're currently deliberating. The approach from the Washington side, these are challenges we're working to address, but they're going to result in some cost increases. I feel like what has gotten us to this point, or the tact taken so far, has been withhold until we are so confident about something we can throw it out, but that's landing like grenades. So 520, we also had been confidently claiming that estimate, we were patting ourselves on the back of how much we had calculated inflation, and we were smarter than everyone, and we had thought about inflation up through 2023. And now we're supposed to own, whoa, we're so bowled over by inflation. Well, this has been known for a while. So we could have been shifting on the 520 number even as early as the start of this year. And it would make it less, in a more organic way, of the conversations here when we heard about the geotechnical survey and saying, hey, that's an increase. One, emphasizing it's significant, because some of us might have thought, okay, we're pushing 600 million. It seems collectively like the experts in the room could have said, hey guys, this is an increase that quite likely could be a third or more of this project going up, or own something.
One of the things I think we need to do, Marla, is I think as the the team that's working for the authority, is as we kind of uncover these landmines, I like to call them, that have always kind of been there. For example, it wasn't something new that just popped up. It's always existed where bedrock was. We just didn't know it. So that was like a landmine that we uncovered, right? So as we start uncovering these things, I think we need to start bringing those maybe forward to the board and just like, hey, we found another grenade buried in the sand over there, and we need to like tread delicately around it and fix it and figure out a way. And does anybody have some feedback that we can use to help diffuse the situation? Maybe that's something that would be better, so that it's not a big surprise at the last minute that, oh my gosh, why did the price go up? And we rattle off 14 items that you never knew about.
Let me grab this. So, no, I appreciate that, James. I think that the takeaway that I have from this is that we need to be more forthright, both between ourselves and with the public. When we discover the point would have been not to say we know how much more it's going to cost because the bridge has to be deeper, but to say we no longer know how much it's going to cost, and we should stop saying that we know how much it's going to cost.
Thank you.
Because it's deeper.
Possibly just deeper. Exactly. Yeah, thanks for completing.
Instead, we're still walking and spouting
So I think
confidence.
what I hear is what Mike is expressing is that there's a fear of giving us that information because of the feeling that people will then demand more precision on, well, how much don't we know? And I think that what we're all saying as a commission is that we want to be treated as if we're capable of handling that in a reasonable manner and not demanding to know how much is not known. Exactly what percentage don't we know? We know that that's silly. And also the fear that the public won't understand it. Well, that's why he gets the big bucks.
But it's also about, like,
right?
Trust us as the commissioners and trust the public. Like, people we can see a lot of examples in different ways as a country right now, but like, when you feel like you are only on the receiving end and you aren't trusted to be empowered to be part of solving the problems, you disengage and you quickly look to vilify whatever that is. And we're not trying to do that. We are trying to bring the community along on probably the most significant project many of us will see in our lifetimes into this region, and figuring out the balance of bringing more information forward to the entire commissioners versus what needs to get workshopped in finer detail through a committee. But I think we started from a place where everything engineering construction has just gone to that committee, and it has done a disservice to where we are. Because again, as I've said, we elect new chairs. We are going to be seating new chairs in a handful of meetings. And without us all coming every year into all of these meetings, getting the same overall capture of the project, we're also creating for ourselves an environment where we aren't seeing succession of any of us feeling confident to step in because we don't see the full picture of the project. And so I think some of this, what I heard from James, is very constructive. It's maybe revisiting how we've set ourselves up, what the committees are used for in their purpose, but then what these few authority meetings we have, what needs to come forward that's valuable from the team doing it, so we all hear it and it does get into the public sphere in a way that we're initiating and owning.
I hear you. I mean, I think we can do that. I think that's where the project is headed. So, do you guys want to finish going through this?
Yeah.
Let's just keep going.
Keep going. So what I wanted to get into was our BIP application and why kind of we're still a very legitimate project when it comes to the BIP. This was the ratings. So there's a 2024 summary that's out there on the project that we can send out to the group that gives you how they ranked us last year versus all the other projects in the country that submitted applications. These are the criteria that they evaluate, the sub-criteria, and then the ratings that we received. So as you can see, we were highly recommended. That's one of the reasons that we automatically rolled over. We have kept all of these items as we've redid our application. Our BCA is still at a 1.81. There's numbers on that. You'll see where it'll be 2.1 if you look in the application. The reason for that is that there is the potential haircuts that we know they may consider. So we've put in there and said, hey, this could be as high as 2.1 if you consider these elements. It's up to the reviewers to consider it. If they take it out, we think worst case scenario, we're at a 1.8, which still is a very strong number. Really, anything after 1.5, they throw everybody in the same bucket. So it doesn't really matter if you're more than that. But you can also see the one that at the bottom, the financial completeness assessment, goes back to your question, Arthur. I think the one area that we could, if we had a commitment from Washington and Oregon, that's where that could change from a medium high to a high. It's still the highest we can get is highly recommended. It just strengthens our highly recommended by all three of those being high. So that's the one area that I think what you were asking about, where the state money comes into play with the BIP. That's the one place that it would come into play with the scoring criteria. All right, go ahead, Amy. So these are the selection criteria priorities. This is right out of not the application, but the summary page that tells you what they're considering when they're looking at these applications. It says give priority to an application for eligible projects within a state for which, and then we hit 2 of those. 3 projects were submitted from Oregon in 24. We don't know right now how many were submitted in 25. Assuming there was probably more than one. Since there was 3 last year and only 1 got it, that 2 would at least be resubmitting. And then fewer than 2 have received grants. There's only been 1 award out of the 3 in 24. Actually, altogether, there's only been 1 award for BIP large bridge within Oregon and Washington. So we also fall into that. And then the descriptions of the 3 projects are below. Just shows you the ones that were in Oregon and Washington for large bridge, and the one that received it. We actually had higher ranks than IBR in a few places, even though, when they got funding, we didn't. So that just, again, goes to our legitimacy as potentially, being a project that's meets the criteria. They also, if you see the eligible project cost is 510 million. So our ask of 532 is reasonable in the sense that it's what's already been identified as eligible cost. The previous side talked about 2 other things. One is we are under the 80% federal allowed share, and we're also under the BIP maximum share of 50%. We're at like 47, 48%. So we meet both of those as well. So we're not asking for more than I'll call our fair share of the BIP or federal funding. So go ahead. Priority considerations. Again, we meet both of those considerations for the large bridge. So again, it's just reinforcing our eligibility for this grant project. Go to the next one. You're only required to meet 2 of these considerations. We actually meet 9 of them. The only one is the FLMA that we don't meet. So again, very strong in our position for the application. Okay.
What's FLMA stand for?
That one I don't know. Sorry. I'll get it for you. So progressive design build. One of the things I wanted to go back and talk about was the process and where we are and the reason that we picked this delivery method. When we made this suggestion to you guys, the reason we did that was because we didn't have funding. We knew this project had and was going to need a lot of flexibility. We didn't have the funding to go out for a bid build or a design build project. So what this shows you is we are really over in that phase 1A procurement. We're right between procurement and phase 1A. At the end of this year, we'll be getting our baseline PCE and validating our cost estimate, which we've kind of already done. But the intention was to do that at the end of 1A. So at the end of 1A, you have a base design that is roughly 15%. Don't get hung up on the percentages. And the reason I tell you that is that you start trying to track percentages when it comes to where a plan set is. Everything is a little bit different, right? Roadway is going to be more at like 60 or 70 because they set all the profiles, they set all the horizontals. So they're going to be a higher percentage than other things. Generally, we're at 15% design. That's one of the reasons we've kind of avoided using percentages because there's a lot of caveats that come with the saying it's a percentage. The process is that we design, we do risk assessment, we talk about risk mitigations, we do an estimate. So that's the process we will do at the end of this year. We'll get a base design so that we'll know actually what Kiewit's proposing to do going forward. That base design will let us know more about what their foundations are, what their assumptions are, what their factor of safeties are, how they've applied different criteria. We'll review that as the owner's rep and say, hey, we think they're a little too conservative here. We think they missed something here. They're using wage rates that are too high. Their schedule's off, whatever those comments end up being. We'll go through that integration process with Kiewit at the end of the year. That's what the ICE process is that validation of what they're telling us the cost of the project is. We will also identify contingency buckets. There will be owner's contingency, there will be contractor's contingency that they will carry, and we'll determine what those amounts are. Along with the risk assessment and risk mitigation, you go through your risks. You talk about the priority of those risks happening, the probability of those risks happening, the potential cost if it does happen, the potential cost if it does not happen. And you take those probabilities, and it's called a Monte Carlo scenario where it basically goes in and applies all the information and spits out the probability of something happening. And it gives you a range of where your project falls, what the percentage chance of it being X dollars, the percentage chance of it being Y dollars. And when we come out of that, we'll then be able to give everybody, hey, here's what the project cost is. You have a 90% chance of the cost being this. You have a 90% chance of the cost being Y. And we'll be able to talk about what that range of the project cost is. That's a requirement from HRWSBA for major projects. All projects do that, typically in between the NEPA and the design. As you start into the design, they'll do that. And they'll come up with that baseline and they'll come up with those risks. The rest of the project is really working those risks and working whether they come to happen or they don't come to happen. As you get more information, you're refining it till you get down to the end of phase 1B, where you have a much more refined design. You've got 100% design, you know what you're building, and then you can allocate your risks. You know what those risks are. So you have a much more defined cost with a much smaller range of probability of how it could go up or how it could go down. So we will do a risk assessment at the end of this year. We'll do a risk assessment when we get to the preliminary design, baseline design, the preliminary design, and then advanced design. We'll do those risk assessments. And then we'll come back and we'll give you guys a report that says, here's the cost, here's the probabilities, here's your risks, here's how they've been allocated, here's how the contingencies have been allocated. And you will get all of that information that I think you're looking for into the exactness of where the project is. So that's kind of what the next steps are now. The authority, but as through progressive design build, is if we get to the end of 1A and we start to negotiate the 1B fee and we decide that the 1B fee that Kiewit's given us is not what we think is a reasonable price, you can decide a number of different things. You can decide to go back out for another designer. We can continue to negotiate with Kiewit, trying to move forward with them. We will bring all of those options back to you to make a decision on how you want to move forward and what the pros and the cons of those decisions are, right? And then you'll make a decision of how you want to move into 1B. You'll go into 1B where we'll do the design of the project. We'll also then define whether or not we're going to start with any early work construction, whether we're going to start doing early stuff. That all depends on how the funding comes together. If we don't have funding come together, we're going to finish the design. And then hopefully by the time we get done with design, we have all the funding we need to go to construction. And then you guys have another decision that you can make. And that decision is at the end, about 18 to 24 months from now, you'll have to make a decision. Kiewit will come down and they'll give us a price for this project. And then again, you're going to have to decide, do you like that price? Do you want to take that price and go to construction, or do you want to put it out to bid? And there will be pros and cons and risks of doing it. You may put it out to bid and you don't get a price that Kiewit gave you. You get prices that are $200 million more than what Kiewit gave you. And then you're got a problem again that we're going to have to deal with. But we'll walk through those as we get to those steps and as we get to those points. And that's what I say, then you'll know what your cost is. You'll know where you're at with the project. But as the reason for the whole funneling that's on here is to show that you're at a really wide range right now. And you will narrow that range as you move forward. But there will always be a price of the project that we talk about, the cost of the project, but we'll also give you those ranges of the ups and lower limits of that and the probabilities of that. That's what we were missing and didn't have because we didn't have really that information. Could we have been more front with what, or giving you more detail about where we were, yes, we should have done that. We should have said, hey, your contingencies are X at this stage. Understand that going forward, this is what you're gonna get when it comes to that.
So, in my experience, this process doesn't end when you have a contract or construction, that surprises happen. So why is the design build process doesn't end before the build happens?
Because the design build is different in that you're usually, when you go to a design build job, you're at 60% design. And you're having the contractor finish the design after you selected them. So they're still figuring out that last 40% of the project as they're developing the plans and stuff. What Progressive is, we can take that to whatever percent complete plans we want to take it to. Right now, we're planning to take it to 100%.
Right.
So potentially all of the risk is known. There's still unknowns, right? You could get out there.
That's my question.
Yes. There is no guarantee that there's not a risk we don't know about.
Right.
So there will be a contingency bucket
Rare
for that.
risk you don't know about? It seems in my experience,
Oh, yeah.
risks you don't know about.
I would say that it's less with this because you've done more design and you've done more details, so you know more, right? And it's more refined. But there's always on every project going to be unknowns, right? That you just don't know about. And you'll establish a contingency to cover those.
And what contingency do you usually have at the?
Typically at the end, you're at a 5 to 10% contingency range, but we'll have to see where we are with the project and what we think. Based on what you find out they'll do additional borings. So wherever they determine the actual piers to be, they're going to go out and do another set of borings, right? Exactly where those piers are going to be. We could find out something that we don't know about today.
So that's
That
the
could be
beauty of this
something.
model, is to be able to identify what those potential risks are, and from both sides, from the contractor side, from the authority side, from HNTB, and say, hey, look, we don't know what the borings are. We could go spend $50,000 right now and go figure out what they look like, or we can risk it. What do you want to do?
Right. I just went through this $30 million tunnel project with ODOT, the Columbia River Highway, and there were multiple surprises during construction that resulted in design changes.
And that would be probably if you went back and looked at what they decided to investigate before they went to bid or before they went to construction, they probably chose to accept those risks and pay for them after. So like James said, you can spend money now and try to work out all those risks, or you can assume some of them and you kind of.
It's just the reason why I'm concerned, why I think it's relevant on concern is because they all kind of be geotechnical issues, fracturing in the rock face and unknown instabilities in the under layment, whatever it's called. So we will, as we work through the design with Kiewit, they'll be able to tell us whether or not, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's the pier, here's what it looks like. Right. They're going to base it on that.
Like when we hit price agreement, it's locked. So new discoveries in this type of a project, you don't see change orders, because if we all commit at price agreement, it's a $850 million bridge, then that's what's paid.
So you
Even
can
more cost is discovered during the project because we tried to exhaust all investigative.
It depends on who covers and who carries what risk.
Right. So if you do that, you can, and you can say, Kiewit, you're going to carry all the risk. They're going to price that. They're going to price what the potential unknowns are, and they're going to give you a price for that to happen that they don't, that they feel like covers their risk of that. Or you can say, we're going to pay you a little less. We're going to keep the risk. And if it happens, then we'll pay you for it. If it doesn't happen, then we don't have to pay for it. Those are all contracts.
It seems like there's only one scenario when we carry the risk, which is, of course, there will be something discovered that requires another cost on us as the owner during the project.
That is potential.
They'll have, I mean, it's not.
They have labor risks that we don't cover. So like they could carry labor risks that say, hey, if you can't get labor, it's your problem, not ours.
So then is that,
Go back to that.
so how does, because that sounds very much like the other alternative where they carry it is like a CMAR approach. So is that what we would merge into at that point if we were to go with the risk being on the contracted construction firm, or how, because that was a direction we could have been choosing from the beginning or no? Like back to the off ramps?
You could decide at 60% design to go that way. There's just more unknown risk. They're gonna price that risk in. At 100% design, there's less risk. They're gonna price that in. It's just how much do you want to know before you put that out? And you'll set the contract terms up before you accept their bid and before they give you a bid. You'll establish those contract terms so they know what they're bidding. And you'll have to determine what risks you're taking, what risks you're putting on the contractor.
And the difference between this and doing a tunnel is that once we get up and out of the water, there aren't a lot of unknowns. At that
Yeah, I'm
point.
worried about the drilling into the.
Even ours,
A lot of our risk is going to lie.
and part of that's gonna be mitigated because they're gonna do borings exactly where they're gonna put the foundations. So that will tell you generally what that foundation's gonna look like, right?
I'd pay for that.
That's the way to do it.
That's something that's very, I mean,
It gives you information. Now, it doesn't mean, I mean, as you all know, you can go 10 feet away and find a cave you didn't know. It's always possible, but you do as much as you want. Now, we could go have them do your borings every 5 feet, the whole foundation if you want to pay for it. And then you'll know for sure that those foundations are good. Well, and you'll pay a whole lot more to go do a bunch of, right? I mean, there's a balance of risk versus known at every project. And that's what we'll work through from now until we get to the point where we get to final design. But you have protections under progressive design build in the sense you don't have to accept it. You also have risks. If you don't accept it, that doesn't guarantee you're going to get a cheaper price. But those are the things you're going to have to look at, and we'll give you as much information as we can to make those decisions.
So in terms of how this project lives or dies right now based on federal funding, are there other programs we're identifying that we're now also going to be pursuing in 25? Or are we all in and BIP is our only route forward here? And if we don't get it, what is that alternative of trying again?
So you got two things. One is BIP is probably your best opportunity, right? You've got a raise grant where you could get a little bit of money. BIP is the only one that's got funding in the amounts that you would need. You could go after another infra grant. It's probably not worth the money to resubmit an infra grant. We don't know if there's a change in, there will be a change of some sort, right? What the new president and the new administration decides to do. They may come out with a new transportation package that has new grants that we could pursue. I would suggest that what we're headed towards is let's continue to design the project. It'll take us about 18 to 24 months to finish the design. And in that time period, if we don't get enough money, then you're going to have to you're going to basically have to put that on the shelf until you have enough money. But go ahead and get your right of way done, get your permitting done, understand, the project as good as you can. But when you get to that point, then when you get the funding, you can go to construction.
And is Mega not an option for this project?
What's that?
Mega?
Mega's not a great fit for this. It's designed for projects that have like a lot of different components like transits.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
It's more flexible.
Got it.
VIP, but
If you are best.
infra is part of the same authorization. There's like
Yeah.
four under that, so it'd be a simple. It
And
would be
remind me-
like for more of the money.
So the BIP and infra were authorized under the.
bill,
Inflation reduction.
the BIL.
Yeah, or different components were, so infra existed before. And that was just plussed up, and then they added this mega component to it under the, I forget the full authorization, what that is, MPDG, the MPDG. And then the bridge investment program was a new program authorized on inflation.
And so these are not, so the BIP, as an example, is not a program that is continuing past this appropriation.
25, 26.
We get two more rounds of it. And then, but typically when these programs expire, there's consideration of a reauthorization,
Sure.
the surface transportation reauthorization. So, and that all just depends on the results of the election, who wants what to happen.
Good.
So in theory, we could be knowing the outcome of BIP while we're still making our way down. On this
Hopefully,
grade.
yeah.
So I guess part of it too, to the point of like, Spring.
When?
Probably spring. I don't think they'll do it before in the next week before
We've
elections.
been told as early as February, as late as late spring, early summer.
Yeah, see, bracketing is really helpful. Yeah.
So is there not also part of this partnership and collaborative approach, a future scenario of this is it? Like the highest we can go on this project is 800 million. What could we build, knowing current conditions, current costs, that delivers a $800 million project that we can bring to this community?
Yes.
Well, we
Okay.
didn't talk about tolls though.
And
Right?
that's,
Is there any, what order of magnitude additional funds could be raised by stretching the tolls, the break?
I mean, I guess my mindset right now is I'm looking for that scenario where we work within what we have as known knowns. And so we maximize the 105 TIFIA. We've got the federal we have right now. We're successful at 125. I want to hear that no. I want to at least see the work done to say, no, you cannot build something to drive on from point A to point B for $700 million. Because that is kind of mind blowing to, I think, a general person that you're telling me we can't do anything with all the money and work we've put in to get to this point. We might watch the only thing we have fall into the water at some point and say, too bad, communities, like back to what we have to do into the community. I want that exercise at some point if we're there. If we get a no on BIP, I want to test that. And then, yes, let's look at the scenario of if we push ourselves on, these other funding buckets. But I think that's part of our responsibility also before we say this is a design that sits on the shelf and may never get brought back.
Yep. Yes, it's interesting. I spent some time this weekend thinking about this whole concept. It's like, why could they build a bridge for $500,000 in 1924 that we can't build for $1 billion in 2024? And part of it, you look at it, first of all, the Columbia River is a very wide river. So it is a long bridge, and they built the bridge that they were lucky lasted. It could easily have not held up. If we had an earthquake in that time, the bridge would not be standing today. So we're not allowed to take that path. And I don't think we would want to take that path. So it really is a situation that they built a bridge that was that was below the standards that were reasonable. We would not, I think.
Lowest standards we have today.
Most what?
Lowest standards we have today.
But even I'm thinking, what standards would I have? Say that I was given the ability to set the standards myself. I would not choose to build a bridge that I know is unlikely to survive an earthquake.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's not the government coming in and telling us.
Yeah.
You really have to make it stand up to earthquake. None of us would be willing.
It was a century
you're
ago.
gonna have that with the engineers that are designing this. I promise you, Claudio, the structural engineer that's putting his name and license on this, at some point's gonna go, I'm out. I'm not doing that.
Right.
So
Right? I mean, he's
So-
gonna do that.
at some point though, if we're not successful in the second federal ask, then you have to be able to go back to the states and say, hey,
So,
that's all
yeah,
that's
and
gonna
to
come
your
from the
point,
bed. That's up to us.
Yeah, to your point, at some point, yes, we will have a certain amount of money that we think there's no opportunity to get any more money. And then we will have to have the conversation about what does a project
Look at that bridge.
before that, what does that look like? We will have that conversation before we quit.
Yeah.
Right, at some point, because there's,
Just a couple berries.
well, and one of the options is that you can, we think, and we haven't. One possibility, I'm trying to figure out how to say this where it doesn't seem definitive. You have the potential, I believe, to separate the demo project from the bridge project.
Yeah.
And I think separate that cost. That could bring this project down, and then we look at the funding for that. I don't know if the FHWA will approve that. They have done it on other projects. I mean, IVR's funding stuff and then gonna tear down the old one. So whether they allow us to do it, that's their decision to make, but that is one possibility that we could do. There's really, because of the way our bridge is, you can't go build the foundations and then come back and build something else, or build one lane in one direction and then cut, we don't really have those options because we're not building a really big, huge thing, right? Could we have them look at an option of, maybe we, build it absolutely minimum right now with the ability to expand, right? that's a possibility you could look at. There are options that we can consider. Can you lower the seismic to a certain thing? Maybe, right? Like we picked the middle of the road on the seismic. Could you go to the bottom and be willing to, hey, the bridge is not functional after an earthquake? You can, and you could meet criteria for that. I don't know that that's what you want to do, but
Yeah, I think it's
Those
just seeing that
discussion
breakdown,
points-
so everybody knows outwardly and inwardly, like we did everything we could
yes.
to try to see what a $700 million bridge would look like and whether that would still be achievable and meet the standards we have set and expect of the project. But absent doing any of that and only just saying, no, you can't do it, that's unsettling to sit with. And
Nope.
we're not there yet,
And
but
at the end of the day too, you have to have an estimate that the feds support you going out to, so like, we can't just arbitrarily say, we're gonna put this out for $700 million because that's what we have, because we think somebody will bid it. You've got to have an estimate that supports that in order for the feds and others to say that you can go out and go to procurement.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, in that like scenario, game planning, there's also, I think, options for funding that, at least in my 3 months here, I haven't heard discussed at any level. Local option levies, special districts, things of that nature. I mean, there's a whole kind of political side of that, but
yeah.
potential environmental money that we haven't tried to get.
It's just the order of magnitude of those things. It's hard to.
They won't be our base, and we don't really have boundaries. Yeah, there would be like a lot of.
For example, a toll, we're talking about maxing out 105 million and say, okay, so say that you could convince people that the risk was, that it was a reasonable bet to double the toll and you'd still have adequate traffic. That's just another 100 million. It doesn't get, the 500 million.
Right. Yeah, it's just, yeah. I think.
The incrementals don't get you there.
Yeah.
Well,
Trucks, you need big trucks, not small trucks.
And there's not enough little incrementals to add up to it either, right? I mean, you could get a little bit from Ray's grant, you could get a little bit through that, you could maybe do like.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
Big numbers to add up there.
If it's like a local option, I mean, the size of those, if you're talking about a regional local options, there's just not enough population. You're talking about a region of 80,000 people.
Sound like a progressive extremist, sir. Just kidding. It's a buzzword at the moment right now. Okay.
I think our best focus is to focus on BIP.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think it's just. And again, I think we all appreciate the presentation and the candid conversation today. When I see that chart of what we're expecting on just the progressive design build, syncing it back to where we are with VIP and just future conversations we need to be having or preparing for is where my head goes. Because, we will know a lot about the future of this project in the next 6 months. So
I think we covered a lot of good ground today, and I appreciate the conversation. Jake needs to get to sleep, so it's quite morning with this. But I suggest that we think about everything we talked about and continue discussion at a future meeting and a future agenda. Jake?
Mike, don't ever tell me you think it's going to be a short meeting again.
Mike, say that?
Yeah. It's kind of like telling you the biological opinion's coming.
Oh, jeez. Another source.
Okay, so I don't see anything else on the agenda that we have to cover, so if there's no objection, we will adjourn.